In a medieval Chinese city, evening falls and a soft snowfall begins, covering the streets with a thin layer of snow. The leader of the Alliance, along with his bodyguards, is carefully examining important documents in a large hall illuminated by lanterns. Tang Jin, an elder of the Alliance, is completely absorbed in reading the letters that carry important news and orders. Counselor Gao Yan stands by his side, watching the leader and his reactions to the information he receives. The leader suddenly notices the first snow outside the window and for a moment is lost in deep thought. This first snow of the year marks the arrival of winter, bringing with it a sense of new changes and opportunities. The counselor remembers how much his child loves snow and dreams of sharing the joy of the first snow with his son. The elder is surprised to learn about the age of the counselor's son and begins to reflect on the transience of time. The question about his son's age causes confusion among the other elders, who are also unable to answer immediately. Finally, the counselors answer that the son is 6 years old and sadly note the elder's obliviousness to such important details. The elder, looking thoughtfully at the table in front of him, reflects on how quickly time passes and how life changes. The counselor reminds him that only a few weeks ago the elder had asked a similar question, emphasizing its recurrence. Despite his memory problems, the elder decides to give a nice gift to his son, a friend wanting to please him. Another question haunts the old man, bothering him more and more. He asks if he has a son or daughter, not even remembering the gender of his child. The old man can't remember if it is a boy or a girl, which makes him even more anxious. The counselors notice his anxiety and ask if the elder is okay, worried about his condition. He realizes that time is relentless, and old age brings its own problems that are difficult to ignore. Nevertheless, the elder is confident in his health, comparing himself to a bull, strong and enduring. He thinks about the 40 years of his rule, wondering how unnoticed these years have flown by, and how much has changed. The old man turned to the counselor, not hiding his thoughts about life and his personality. He asked the counselor to express his opinion of him as a person. At first, the counselor was surprised and a little confused, but he realized that he was being asked to evaluate the elder's personality. The question seemed strange, but the answer was obvious to everyone present. Everyone knew that he was the most respected person in Sengu, known for his deeds. The counselor's words made the elder reflect on his essence and who he had become during his lifetime. Nicknamed the God of War Tianjing, he became a legend at the age of 9. Since then, he devoted many years to fighting unorthodox sects that threatened the world. He destroyed the Dark Ways and the cult of the Blood God, known for its sinister influence on society. In the end, he fulfilled a long-held wish of the Morim Alliance, completing his mission and bringing peace to the region. Thanks to his efforts, peace was maintained in the city. But the enemies did not stop their attempts. The enemies repeatedly tried to poison or kill him, but all their efforts were in vain. He defeated all those who dared to oppose him, defending his power and the strength of the Alliance. The townspeople nicknamed him the steadfast leader of the Alliance, recognizing his strength and resilience. As a leader, he mercilessly punished traitors, upholding justice and order in the city. He became a symbol of justice and martial arts skill, an example for others. His existence became the personification of the warrior's path, the true essence of Qianhu. Recently, the master had been behaving strangely, which caused concern among his advisors. After reassuring them, he let them go, assuring them that he was fine. Later, he turned to his son, noting his absence from home, but giving him the freedom to choose. The son looked closely at his father and realized that the situation was not as rosy as it seemed at first glance. His eyes showed care and concern, which he tried to hide. Respecting his father's wishes, the son bowed his head in gratitude, expressed words of support, and advised him to get some rest, trying to bring calm to their conversation. On this quiet, snowy evening, when the city was slowly falling asleep and the wind barely swayed the branches of the trees covered with snow, the master thought thoughtfully about his son's words, and how if a person born here reached incredible heights, there would be no room for doubt or discussion. He went through an extremely difficult life, filled with trials and struggles that marked every step of his journey. Over time, he, once a brave and invincible young warrior, turned into an old man whose physical strength had diminished and whose memory began to betray him, making him forget the details of his glorious past. Now he felt weaker, losing his former strength, and this path seemed to him to be getting longer and more difficult. At that moment, a deep longing suddenly gripped him, piercing his heart with unexpected pain. He grabbed his chest tightly, trying to suppress the cough and pain that suddenly gripped him, making him think about his health and future. Surprised by his sudden illness, he wondered why it had happened so suddenly and unexpectedly. Grabbing his chest with all his might, he tried to calm down and collect his thoughts. However, he instantly fainted, falling to the floor, which usually meant the worst. But then light began to penetrate his eyes, heralding hope for salvation. Gradually opening his eyes, he realized that he was in an unfamiliar place. The smell of medicinal herbs suggested that he was probably in a medical office. He realized that he had lost consciousness and must have been taken to the doctor's office, where Counselor Gao Yang had probably already expressed his displeasure at his neglect of his health. Suddenly, he felt funny at the thought that he, the strongest among the strong, had fainted. As he started to get out of bed, he noticed something strange. His energy center, Dan Tang, was empty, which confused and worried him. He assumed it could be poison dissipating his vital qi energy, but quickly dismissed the thought because such a poison would not be able to affect him. When he woke up, he saw a man and a woman standing in front of him, who looked happy that he had regained consciousness. The woman ran up to him asking if he was okay. However, the man, in whose body the old man had awakened, could not recognize them. He suddenly noticed that his voice sounded strange and unfamiliar. The woman asked him with a smile if he really didn't know who she was, and he seriously asked her name. She started laughing, asking if he was sure of what he was saying. Despite the confusion in his head, the woman's face seemed familiar to him. Suddenly, she hit him in the face, trying to jog his memory. Furious, she said that a simple apology would not be enough for the words he had just said. The woman, unable to contain her emotions, screamed, saying that they had been worried about his health all night and had not slept a single minute. Hearing this, the boy began to guess that these people could be his parents, but how could this happen? The father hugged his wife, trying to restrain her from doing anything further, because she was extremely outraged, reminding him that she was his mother and he was an ungrateful son. The father tried to calm the situation down, saying that the boy had not yet fully recovered from the fainting spell. The boy felt a lump in his throat, overwhelmed by conflicting emotions. Hoping it was just a dream, he heard his mother expressing her worst wishes for his ingratitude. He prayed that it was just a nightmare, but if it wasn't, what was happening? Suddenly he saw his reflection in the mirror. He noticed his young skin and hands, and horror gripped his soul. It was impossible for this to be real, and he realized that this must be a dream. In this whirlpool of reality, he asked himself, why does this dream seem so real? Seeing the reflection of his younger self, he sinks down on the bed, hoping to wake up in his usual form. But his parents do not let him fall asleep, gently reproaching him for his childish pranks. Time passed quickly and evening was approaching. Almost 10 hours had passed. The man lay in his room, realizing that he was still dreaming. Looking out the window, he noticed how evening was gradually falling. He dreamed of waking up like a normal alliance leader, but the reality remained the same. Trying unsuccessfully to sink deeper into the dream, he realizes that this dream is indistinguishable from reality, with no signs of problems. He cannot understand what happened and what changed his world so dramatically. He had experienced a lot in his 70 years of life, but reincarnation? It was something completely new and incredible. The memories of his life as Chinzin remained in his mind, haunting him. Suddenly an old man entered the room, bringing tea and soup, and asked him reproachfully how he was not ashamed. The boy did not understand why the old man was treating him this way, because he did not remember his actions of the previous day. Finding himself in this body, he wondered if he should hide his true identity from the old man. However, the old man guessed that the boy was confused, reading it on his face. He asked anxiously why he was considered irresponsible when he was just lying in bed. He recalled that while leading the alliance, he always understood both the good and bad sides of situations. In dangerous situations, he never blamed anyone or relied on others, always having a clear attitude towards his subordinates. He always took responsibility for his duties, realizing the importance of his work. Now he suddenly felt irresponsible, trying to understand what had really happened. As he left the room, the old man sharply stated that the boy was a disgrace to the family. These words caused fear and anxiety in the boy, making him think. The door slammed loudly behind the old man, leaving the boy alone. Alone, he wondered what he or the person in whose body he was trapped had done to deserve such criticism. This assessment was extremely difficult and exhausting for him. Suddenly the door opened again. A young man entered the room, exclaiming that everything had finally become clear. Sitting down next to him, he asked why the boy never listened to anyone, reminding him of the repeated warnings. Fighting against a woman never brings victory, and addiction to alcohol leads to a fall. The master in the boy's body asked who the young man was. The guy next to him froze, feeling embarrassed. The young man admitted that he had heard about the boy's amnesia, and that everyone was discussing his strange behavior, as if he had lost his memory. With a note of sadness in his voice, he added that even in such a situation, the boy finds a way to circumvent the system. If it wasn't for that day, you would have been able to assess the situation better. But it's not your fault, he reassured. Continuing, the young man noted that this was a great opportunity to take up serious martial arts training, especially after the incident with the girl. The man repeated his question again, wanting to clarify the answer. The guy seriously introduced himself as Guan Toi and asked him to stop joking about memory loss, noticing a mistake in his name. Trying to rectify the situation, the young man clarified that he was called Lighthead and not Baldhead, but remained surprised by his behavior. Our hero insisted that he really did not remember anything. The young man assured him that there was no need to pretend, expressing his sincere concern. He insisted on his amnesia, repeating it several times to convince the other man. The guy asked about the loan, and the reincarnate replied that he did not remember the amount of the debt. After the amount was announced, the reincarnate became embarrassed, saying that he did not have that much money on him. Nevertheless, he took out a few coins and gave them to the guy. This gesture convinced the interlocutor of the reincarnate's sincerity, and that he had indeed lost his memory. When he was asked why he decided to check with money, the guy replied that the real owner of the body would never pay back the debt. Then the reincarnate realized that he had not been the best person in his past life, causing him to have a bad opinion of himself. Realizing the gravity of the situation, he decided to tell more about himself, assuming that he could have made many mistakes. His past began to reveal itself. A meeting with Lady Sun ended in a rejection, after which he lost control and became aggressive towards others. This led to him being beaten and falling into a pond after getting drunk to the point of unconsciousness. The reincarnated man thought about his past, asking himself who Lady Sun was and how he could have ended up in such a situation. The words about Lady Sun made the guy sitting across from him concentrate, because it was impossible not to know such a famous person. However, he really had no idea who she was. The guy explained that Lady Sun Lin was the heiress of the Sun family and the most beautiful girl in Shandong. Not only her beauty, but also her intelligence and strength set her apart, although she had one flaw. This flaw was that she was his fiancée. This information confused the hero a bit, because he did not understand why being a bride was considered a disadvantage. The guy explained that she was unlucky with her husband, and that was her only flaw, sympathizing with her for her unhappy marriage. The tension in the air grew, and there was no silence between them. The reincarnated master asked if he often beat her, which surprised the boy. Explaining that he felt a strange itch in his hand and the urge to strike, he assured him that their relationship was stronger than any calculation, deeper than a formal marriage. Examining his hand, the young man begins to realize that his past might indeed have been tumultuous. The old man's words about the family's disgrace kept echoing in his head, haunting him. He kept asking the boy about the details of his past. The boy told him that he had lost large sums of money on gambling and courtesans with whom he fell recklessly in love. He often went on drinking binges, got into fights, ran away from home, and claimed that he did not want to practice martial arts, trying to make a name for himself in Qianhu. Then Master interrupted him. Now the Master understands why his mother hit him only once. He would not have left a living place on himself for such actions. Asking about Guan Toi's identity, the boy hesitated between telling the truth and lying in his answer. The master insisted on honesty, calling it the last chance. The boy was worried because the truth was not the best answer. Guan Toi, the personality into which the master was reincarnated, was actually considered a scum of the earth. The words about his own failure made the master realize that the situation was really complicated and serious. He remembered his father's words about being the incarnation of Qianhu, which inspired him. Feeling relieved, the master accepted the idea that perhaps he had really died and was given a chance for a new life. He took his reincarnation as the beginning of a new story, a new path. The new day began with the realization that the body in which he woke up belonged to Lidan, the young head of a swordsman clan from Shandong. Lidan was weak not only in interpersonal relationships, but also in martial arts, where his level was very low. As the 20-year-old heir to the swordsman clan, he had only spent 5 years practicing his energy. During this time, he had a servant whom his annoying mother called Guanta. Turning to Guantai, our hero asked if he had heard any rumors. Perhaps a treasure map of the former master or a two-headed monster had appeared. At these words, Guantai only frowned skeptically, not understanding where such ideas could come from. Continuing, our hero mentioned the possible death of the alliance leader. Guantu replied that there was no reason to believe in the death of a healthy leader, and he had not heard any rumors about it. This made the master think, because he had been in a new body for several days now, but there had been no rumors of the leader's death or other references. He assumed that perhaps the information about his death had been concealed to avoid political or social repercussions for the village. Guantoi sighed, noting that he was the one who had been the subject of some rumors. It was rumored that he had lost his memory after being beaten by Lady Sun. The master was not pleased to hear such stories, realizing that he had fallen victim to women's hands even in his previous life. He smiled as he spoke enthusiastically of Lady Sun's greatness, which was so impressive that he rushed to her without hesitation, despite the realization of the possible threat. Although not much has passed since his return, rumors of her beauty are already spreading everywhere. Guantu reminded the master of the lines of people who had lined up to see Lady Sun's beauty. However, the master could not remember this, because his meetings with numerous women always ended in failure. In his previous life, he had become a head too early, which had negatively affected his personal life. For many women, he was the strongest, but no one saw him as a simple man. His only love was the sword he held in his hands. Guantu said that he noticed that the master was eager to meet his lady, but the master rejected this idea, claiming that he had forgotten everything about Lady Sun, although he called her the most beautiful in the world. Guantu asked why that night was a decisive moment for him. This raised the question of whether there was a reason why the martial artist had decided to take a different path. Guantu was shocked to realize that his friend had indeed lost his memory. He found his sword in the warehouse, which he had to search for with great difficulty, and took it, feeling that it was exactly what he needed. Holding the sword in his hands, he felt a connection to the weapon that he hadn't felt in a long time. It was the first time in a long time that he had held a sword in his hands. It had been a long time since he had reached the peak of his swordsmanship, and there was no need to fight anymore, because there were no enemies left. Despite being called the god of war, he never mastered the art of the mental sword. Mental sword is a state in which a warrior can use invisible weapons created by the power of his mind, and then there was nothing he could not cut. Reborn in a new body, he seeks to follow the path he could not take in his previous life. His eyes were filled with the strength of a war veteran who has been given a chance for a new life. Pulling out his sword, he frightened his friend, who hastened to assure him that the master was not planning revenge on Lady Sun. Our hero was confused, not understanding what was going on and why his friend had decided so. The friend began to get nervous, because his face showed that he was not joking. "I can't even imagine this sword," he sighed heavily. In his new life, his mother came to him asking if it was true. At first, he did not understand what she was talking about, but she asked him sharply if he really wanted to deceive everyone again by accusing him of lying, and asked why he was holding the sword. He replied that he hadn't touched the sword for a long time, and just decided to pick it up. "From that moment on, I decided to take martial arts seriously," he said. His mother realized that he was trying to convince her again, suspecting that he was still lying and might be up to no good. "I don't know what I'm going to do with this sword," he told his mother, not revealing his plans. He knew, however, that he would never harm his fiancée. He promised his mother that he would not use the sword against those who were weaker than him. His mother's gaze was full of incomprehension. She looked at him as if she were seeing him for the first time. Our hero realizes that he was too caught up in battles to start a family, and his passion for fighting made him forget about his duties to the clan. He doesn't understand why he was reborn in a new body. But this whole reality is now his, and it's a whole new life. "As long as I live in this body, you are my mother," he said with a slight sadness in his voice. These words surprised his mother, but her eyes softened a little, and she began to believe that he had really changed. A few days later, the atmosphere in the house became calmer. The master seriously started training, restoring his fighting skills. He worked hard to restore his inner energy, devoting all his time to training. At first, it was hard for him, but with each passing day, he felt his control over his energy returning to him. The energy began to fill his body, revitalizing it with new strength and lust for life. During meditation and training, he began to emit a bright light of power that shone around him like a halo. Although the training was grueling and difficult, he did not give up, moving toward his goal. Eventually, he was able to clear the energy accumulated over 5 years of practicing low-quality internal arts and began to unleash his true potential. Using the technique of the celestial art of consciousness circulation, he learned to control his breathing. This helped him increase his inner strength and resilience, making him even stronger. Suddenly, his friend burst into the room looking worried. He reported a serious problem that had arisen. Our hero realized that it was time to act, feeling that the time had come. He assumed that perhaps the leader of the alliance had died, and this was the cause of the panic. However, his friend was confused by this thought and asked where the idea of the leader's death came from. He repeated the word leader, trying to understand what was happening. When asked who it was, he replied that he was referring to their incompetent commander, Suyunkin. "Why is there so much noise? What's going on?" the comrade asked, puzzled by the situation. He emphasized that Lady Sun was walking next to the commander. They are both heading straight for him, and he feels the tension rising. Hearing this, our hero went out to meet them, hoping not to create additional problems and meet them with dignity. He realized that before meeting Lady Sun, he needed to apologize with respect and understanding. Realizing this, he suddenly saw his guests. The father exclaimed, "Oh, you've come! I'm glad to see you!" Our hero's eyes focused on the girl. She radiated incredible beauty, belonging to the Huang Lin clan. He was fascinated by her. Wondering why she had become the chosen one of this body, his thoughts wandering, the girl searched his eyes with her gaze. But as soon as their eyes met, she immediately turned away. Turning to the girl's father after a long separation, he asked if they were doing well. He expressed his regret over the incident, refusing to comment further, not wanting to aggravate the situation. The girl frowned, as if trying to think of something quickly on the spot. It was clear that she found it difficult to forgive her lover for his past actions. The hero's father decided that it was his son who should apologize, not the girl, and emphasized this during the silent pause. Then the girl started talking, saying that they needed to discuss some things. Our hero's father asked what exactly she wanted to talk about. The girl seriously stated that she wanted to terminate the marriage contract. This news shocked both parents. Our hero watched the situation, realizing that things were taking a difficult turn. The girl's father asked why she had decided to do this so suddenly. She replied that their marriage was arranged by calculation, and although it may sound rude, she believed that she had the right to make her own decision. After these words, there was an awkward silence. The girl's words made everyone hold their breath. She was very uncomfortable in front of her parents, but she absolutely did not want to marry this man. Despite her feelings of shame, she felt the need to speak out. Our hero's parents did not know how to react to her words, feeling embarrassed. However, the girl's father reacted sharply, accusing her of being ungrateful and wanting to break off the engagement without discussing it with him. He criticized her for having too high expectations and being ungrateful. The father's words hurt the girl deeply. One of the parents intervened to try to calm the situation and offered to discuss the reasons for her decision. Unexpectedly, the hero said that he also wanted to break off the engagement. This statement further tensed the atmosphere, causing surprise among everyone present. The protagonist's assistant was shocked by his words, but the guy remained calm and confident. The girl was shocked by the unexpected development of events, not expecting such a turn. The bride's father, ashamed of his reaction, realized that he had overreacted. The reincarnated master took the blame, admitting his mistakes and expressing gratitude to the people around him, despite the shortcomings of the previous body owner. As he continued his speech, he explained that his words were not caused by resentment toward the bride. So why did he say it? What could have led to such consequences? The master answered that he wanted to marry a woman he really loved. The bride's face showed sadness, a sense of loss and disappointment. The hero's parents bowed their heads, realizing that no marriage can be happy if it's not based on love. The father tried to ease the tense atmosphere by saying that it was great when everyone agreed with this idea, trying to resolve the situation. The girl's father became angry, saying that they could not just break the marriage agreement. The boy's father replied that, as his daughter had said, they had no right to decide her future for her. These words upset the girl's father even more, and he decided that enough talk was enough for today. The girl shifted slightly in her seat, not knowing what to do next. She asked the boy why he had changed his mind. He jokingly replied that her hand was too heavy. The girl did not respond to this, but remained silent, deep in thought. She paid her respects to his parents by bowing before them. Then she followed her father without looking back. The boy watched her go, realizing that he was letting her go forever. His parents asked him anxiously what he planned to do next. Our hero replied that he would not look for another bride for now, but would focus on something else. His mother asked him if it was not consensual, why he had made such a scene. He coughed, apologizing for the inconvenience, and explained that he didn't really know what to say, because he had only recently found himself in this new body. His parents were worried about what he was going to do next. As he had mentioned earlier, his goal was to study martial arts in depth. Was it really a serious decision? But the boy was not joking and had clear intentions. After these words, a chill ran down his mother's back. Seeing this, the father decided to calm her down by taking her away from all her problems and making her a cup of tea. The father was proud of his son's words. He had finally said something worthwhile, and they decided to celebrate. They all went to celebrate together. Looking after them, our hero feels like his heart is ready to jump out of his chest from the tension. Despite being in the body of this young man, the family shows him a lot of care and warmth, but something inside him is uneasy. Even with his family, he feels vulnerable. Assuming that he is the only one who understands what true love is, his mind might weaken. He won't have to act as rigorously as he used to. For many hours during the day, he trained to the point of exhaustion. His body was already tired from the strain and effort. He noticed that without using the power of his inner art, his physical strength would be quite low. To improve his physical fitness, he needed to run 12 kilometers. Otherwise, all his efforts might be in vain. He realized that if he continued to work as hard as he did, his business would certainly improve. When he entered the yard, he suddenly saw her. It was the same girl who had initially avoided him, but fate had determined that she would become his wife. She came up to him, starting a conversation that made his heart speed up its rhythm. He was stunned by her presence, but she quickly brought him to his senses, saying, "Don't take it so seriously. I'm not here of my own free will." Her father sent them both away to apologize. The boy reassured her, assuring her that he did not feel any offense at her arrival. Then she asked him if he remembered what he had said that day when he was drunk. A little embarrassed, he recalled his words. "Let's see how long her beauty lasts." With these words, he insulted her, reminding her that over time her face would become covered with wrinkles, and her beauty would fade. The hero realized that he had to atone for the unfortunate words of the previous owner of this body. He apologized to her for what had happened, but the girl, to his surprise, said that he was right. The master did not understand what she meant. She explained that although everyone was praising her appearance now, in time this beauty would fade, and no one would admire her anymore. However, she plans to make a name for herself through her hard work, and because of this, she has no intention of dating any of the men. The reason she suggested breaking off the engagement is because she doesn't like the guy. She assumed that he also agreed to call off the wedding because she hurt his feelings. The guy smiled back at her. He exhaled all the negativity that had accumulated inside. He said, "Think what you want." The hero in his past life had lived for more than 20 years and had forgotten what he had felt in those years. However, this moment reminded him of the past. Because of all these emotions, the previous owner of the body was very worried. "Don't worry," he told her. "This is my final decision about our wedding." The young bride could not make sense of these wise words, feeling uncertain and doubtful. His last words were that he would no longer be an obstacle in her life, giving her the freedom to choose. With these words, he walked past her and headed for his house, leaving her in awe. The girl turned around, not believing that everything had ended so easily and without any arguments. She looked after him, trying to understand what had just happened, but he walked on, not even looking back, leaving everything behind. In his past life, when he was 20 years old, he had shed a lot of blood using his sword to kill various thieves who became his training targets. His youth was not radiant. It was tinged with the color of blood. He realized that he had indeed lived a hard life full of struggle. Life had given him a second chance, and in this new version he would not hold anyone by force. The master went to the snowy mountains, seeking solitude and peace. There, amidst the silence and snow, he continued his training, improving his skills and strength. Standing in a fighting stance, he dug his feet into the snow, feeling the cold penetrating the fabric of his shoes. Holding his sword in his hands, he began to recall his forgotten skills, focusing on each movement. He recalled the art of the asura sword, a technique that transcends the limits of the soul. He used it to tear the hearts of the 13 leaders of the Shadow Path syndicates to pieces, leaving them vulnerable. Immersed in his memories, he increasingly felt the contrast between the aging body that once belonged to him and the new, young body. A dark silhouette appeared before him, the embodiment of past enemies and evil. He swung his sword, feeling power and strength in every movement. The light energy of the sword cut through the darkness like lightning, illuminating the night. He cut off the head of the leader of the bloody sky cult, demonstrating his determination and skill. After this feat, he received the title of the strongest in the world, earning the respect and fear of his enemies. His meditation reached a new level, revealing hidden potentials and powers. When he was able to accumulate his energy, it vibrated with such intensity that it seemed as if nature itself was holding its breath. The explosive technique he used caused a powerful wave that spread throughout the winter forest. It was a kind of chase of energy that rushed between the trees, leaving a glow behind. The light accompanying this wave illuminated the surrounding trees, creating an incredible atmosphere. The house that stood near the training ground rose above the ground as if under the influence of a powerful force. It was extremely easy for the master to use martial arts. His movements were confident and precise. It seemed that this guy had an innate talent for martial arts that he had never shown before. How Li Dan could lead such a lifestyle with his physique was beyond the master's comprehension, which surprised him even more. At this moment, in one of the sunny spots in the forest, time seemed to stand still, reflecting the harmony of strength and tranquility. His ex-girlfriend was discussing our hero's new occupation with a friend, surprised by his sudden change. He had never trained or held a sword before, so everyone in the clan was surprised by his sudden passion for martial arts. Her friend assumed that he was doing all this to impress her, although the girl noticed that he had really changed and was not trying to stand out in front of her. Their friend remarked, "But isn't he the one who always tries to be the center of attention?" He recalled their last meeting with Lady Sun, emphasizing how confident and convincing he looked. She had announced that there would be a meeting of promising young people today that everyone was looking forward to. She also had to be there because the young gentleman who organized the event was personally checking to make sure she was coming. "And she knows this syndicate so well," her friend said with a touch of irony. The girl responded sharply, asking not to be reminded of it again. In spite of everything, she decided to be there, ready for any surprises. This realization carried a certain danger for her friend, which added anxiety to their conversation. They decided that they needed to be prepared to defend themselves in case of any threat, so they agreed to meet and discuss all the possible risks. A typical Chinese street is bustling with life, full of hustle and bustle, with a variety of vendors and passers-by. Our hero was wandering around the city trying to hear some news about the death of the Alliance leader, but everything was quiet. He sat at a table in a tea house, reflecting on the absence of any rumors, which made him anxious. He wondered why there had been no announcement of changes in the Alliance. If he had the opportunity, he would have immediately gone to the Murim Alliance to ask Galyan about the current situation, but circumstances kept him in place. As he watched the traffic around him, he saw a woman coming up the stairs with a look of concern on her face. She noticed his gaze and also became concerned, not understanding what he was doing here. The gathering of young people also reacted in surprise to the boy's appearance. All eyes were on him. They looked at him with suspicion and curiosity, wondering what this dubious character was doing among them. One of them approached him and asked him with a smile how he felt after his resurrection. It was an old acquaintance with whom the hero had had conflicts even before reincarnation. There were rumors that he had been actively training in martial arts lately, but to what end? The hero smiled at his old enemy, feeling confident. He calmly replied, asking if he could show him at least one person who trains to beat someone. He emphasized that the real purpose of training is not just to fight, but to be ready for any circumstances, even to kill if necessary. The enemy was caught off guard by these words and noticed a cold glint in the hero's eyes. The master, sipping his tea, remained calm and in control of the situation, demonstrating that he was not afraid of challenges. Lindan's opponent was afraid of him, despite his attempts to hide his emotions. Lindan managed to inspire this fear by his mere presence. The enemy tried to humiliate Lindan to make himself feel superior by insinuating that he had been beaten by a girl. When he heard about the debt, Lindan took note of it and calmly promised that he would ask his friend Huang about it. A girl came out of the crowd and firmly stated that she had never claimed to have beaten him. Her opponent, trying to save face, replied that she shouldn't make excuses and asked if this scoundrel was causing her any trouble. She calmly replied that it did not bother her at all. Lindan put on his Chinese hat as he prepared to leave. He realized that he shouldn't waste time and energy on foolish children who don't understand the true nature of things. He was tormented by the question of why he was reborn in this particular body and what was the purpose of it. Even though it remained unknown, he was sure that he was not wasting his time looking for answers and developing further. He confidently walked past his beloved, leaving behind a feeling of confidence. Everyone noticed that now there was a slightly different atmosphere around him, more serious and mysterious. His unusual behavior deeply disturbed the girl, who tried to understand what had changed. As evening approached, Wally, his friend, was sweeping up the garbage in the yard, minding his own business. When he saw Lindan, the young man turned to him. He asked Wally why he was sweeping up at such a late hour, and he replied that Leader Yang was due to arrive soon. Hearing about the leader, Lindan was shocked. He didn't even know who he was. Guan, holding the broom, was once again surprised at Lindan's forgetfulness, not understanding how he could forget such an important person. Guan exhaled heavily, and having prepared himself, began to tell his story, hoping to help the hero remember important details. Our hero realized that no matter how many questions he asked, no one would believe him, because his memory seemed doubtful to everyone. Guang told him about the leader of the largest syndicate in Shandong, who was Ji Jie. He explained that this was the reason why they were only in second place. The guy replied that they were actually in third place now. But what was the reason for their rapid fall to third place? The guy asked suspiciously, "You really don't know?" The hero assumed that it was because of him, and indeed it was true. A considerable amount of money was spent to solve the problems he caused. And because of this, the number of soldiers had to be reduced. When our hero got into debt, he often complained about the huge amount of his obligations. But what bothered him the most was that he owed the Little Jan Syndicate. Now he began to understand why he had behaved the way he did and what the consequences of his actions were for the clan. They had 3 large battalions of swordsmen whose numbers were dwindling, and now there was only 1 left. The same was true of the cavalry, which had also declined. The hero had heard that the clan's finances had been tight lately. Guan looked at him with an expression of mockery, as if he understood something more. He wanted to say something, but kept silent, keeping his thoughts to himself. The master suggested that perhaps his salary had been cut more than anyone else's. However, Guan replied that this had not happened yet, and the head of the house was primarily focused on salary. Listening to all this, our hero realized that the situation was more complicated than he thought. He was slowly and surely destroying his family's future by creating problems. Now it was clear that he was the one who would have to solve these problems. But why all the fuss about this dinner? This question began to intrigue the boy. Guan explained that they had borrowed a significant amount of money from the person who would be coming to the dinner, and so they should be diligent in preparing. After that, he went back to work because he had no time to be idle. He had a lot of tasks waiting for him. This whole situation kept the hero in suspense, making him think about the upcoming events. Suddenly, a girl came up and began to tell him how the leader of the Yan clan had once defeated Guan Toi's brother. Our hero recognized her as Sun He, whom Guan remembered as a very kind and compassionate person. She began to tell him why this rascal standing before them had gained such a reputation. She asked who had hit him, trying to understand the situation. Sun He pointed out that there was garbage left in the yard, and such laziness of the servants deserved a flogging. The guy, furious with the situation, beat the other man's servant and asked who had left the garbage. The girl was on the verge of tears when she said that it was Yang, the leader, who had left the garbage, deliberately creating a mess. The young man realized his mistake when he realized that he had not only carelessly thrown away the garbage, but had also beaten the servant for not cleaning it up. The girl pouted, barely holding back her tears at the injustice of the situation. "Did I have anything to do with this?" the owner asked, trying to figure out if he had anything to do with it. The girl exclaimed in a loud voice that he was just standing by, letting off gas and laughing while the others tried to deal with the trouble. This was the best summary to describe the body the master had transformed into, showing how badly it had behaved. He began to realize that Li Dan's legacy was not just bad, but terrible. And how could he dare to be so irresponsible? However, the girl noted that Guan had mentioned that the young master had been behaving much better in recent days, which gave him hope for change. It was hard for the owner to realize how terribly he had been treated by the previous owner of the body. The girl admitted that she did not trust him very much, but she trusted her younger brother Guan, who had seen the changes in his behavior. She bowed to him, expressing her respect, though she remained cautious. Then she went about her business, leaving him brooding. After this conversation, a lot of thoughts spun around in his head, causing doubts and reflection. But suddenly he heard some sounds that made him alert and distracted from his thoughts. The master was working so hard that sawdust was flying around him, creating an atmosphere of hard work. He noticed this and realized that although the boy had succeeded, it was because of his efforts. The master still treated him with respect, appreciating his perseverance. Day turned into night, and when evening came, the clan leader arrived. He opened the gate of the courtyard. The clan leader did not enter alone. He was accompanied by a whole delegation, guarded by an army of soldiers. It seemed that he had come not to have dinner, but to lay siege to the castle. The moon was brightly illuminating the courtyard, adding to the mystique of the event. The night torches only emphasized the atmosphere of mystery and tension. The clan leader greeted and asked how everyone was doing, looking around with a cold gaze. The clan leader, having arrived after such a long journey, would be grateful for the hospitality and warm welcome that could relieve his fatigue. However, it seems very strange to our hero that this leader showed up so late, arousing suspicion. His behavior hinted at a certain arrogance. He looked at the audience with a clear sense of superiority. One of the hero's friends remarked that the villain here was the one who had beaten Guan Toi for no reason. It turned out that this particular scoundrel had caused many problems, and his presence was an unpleasant surprise. The leader addressed the audience, asking if anyone knew the head of the Peng family from Huber City. The answer was yes. He said that they had decided to unite with them and start a joint business. The head just mentioned the leader, which caused a certain resonance. The leader thanked him for the information, which added formality to the conversation. After thanking him, the leader laughed, emphasizing that he was the only one who really cared about their alliance. The clan leader, who was kind and strong, would always be grateful for mutual support and cooperation, as it strengthens their position and ensures a common future. The clan leader offered to come inside the house to discuss all the issues in a more private atmosphere. The boy's father was just seeing the head of the family off, and at that moment they were not together with the rest of the group. The boy was approached by a recent acquaintance who mockingly called him a debt lover. The guy behaved with restraint, not giving in to provocation. He looked at his good friend Guan Toi, who seemed to be tense as well. Jacob, another acquaintance, had been working diligently beside him, but now stood opposite him, stiffening with tension. He saw the expression on the boy's face, and it was becoming increasingly difficult for him to contain his emotions. The boy decided not to waste time and avoid idle chatter, intending to deal with the situation quickly. As he walked away, he stopped, amazed at the petty pride of this insignificant old man who was trying to humiliate him. It was time to stop making excuses and quickly repay the debt. He asked himself when he planned to pay back the 20,000, feeling that this issue could no longer be postponed. Our hero did not hesitate and confidently stated that he owed nothing to anyone. His distant acquaintance was so offended by these words that he thought the hero still considered himself the heir to the best clan. To this, our hero calmly replied that he already knew the answer. No, he no longer had that status. He emphasized that it was thanks to his actions that everything fell into place. People in the neighborhood really noticed that he had changed, and this caused a mixed reaction. The amount of debt mentioned was so significant that it could easily provoke financial difficulties for an average family. But what could make them take on such a large sum? Suddenly, he heard a loud scream and quickly turned around. That rascal had dared to use one of the servants as a tool, causing outrage. Obviously, the master did not appreciate this mockery and was ready to intervene. His loyal friend and servant decided to defend the girl, telling the villain that she was just a child and did not deserve such insults. The villain, seeing that the servant had touched him, was filled with rage. Kung realized that he had made a mistake and shouldn't have done it. He fell to his knees and lowered his head, apologizing and expressing deep regret. The villain saw this as an opportunity to show his power, realizing that he could do whatever he wanted with Kung, even send him to the next world. He remembered that the last time he was beaten, it was his own fault. He also fell to his knees, begging for forgiveness like a servant, showing his weakness. But at that moment, the villain's spit fell to the ground next to him. This was the ultimate display of disrespect, as the villain spat in the servant's direction, showing everyone present that things were bad and that he had no respect for any of them. Filled with hatred, the villain claimed that the place was dirty, using this as an excuse for his attacks. And this was just nonsense, since it was he who left the mess, trying to justify his aggression. The villain was also angry that his message was not responded to properly. However, he noted that it was just a small thing that could be ignored. However, while insisting on his rightness, he suddenly wondered why the servant was lying on the ground. Didn't he say that he had to be dressed nicely for the guests? The boy realized that this was nonsense, but he agreed to clean it up anyway to avoid further problems. The villain stepped on the boy's hand, stopping him from leaving and forcing him to stay put. The girl, filled with indignation, screamed, "What is he doing?" But this rascal cynically said that since saliva came out of his mouth, it should be cleaned up with his mouth as well. It was extremely disgusting and humiliating. The people around were shocked by this horrible behavior and the guests' rude remarks, not believing their eyes and ears. The girl, with tears in her eyes, insisted that she would clean up the mess herself, realizing that Guan had stood up for her and had been insulted. Guan intervened and asked her not to interfere, trying to stop her. He suggested that she go to the clan leader if she needed to resolve something. The girl reluctantly agreed, feeling helpless in this situation, but decided to walk away. At that moment, a young gentleman approached them, looking confident and ready to help resolve the situation. He approached them, calmly and with determination, wanting to intervene and restore order. The girl, looking at him with tears, felt offended and hoped that this was his chance to make amends. The young man came over and said that all the dirt needed to be removed, emphasizing the importance of cleanliness. The girl was shocked by his words, not believing that he could say such a thing in such a situation. Guan understood that the order to lick the saliva off the ground was cruel and humiliating, and it was a difficult test for him. The villain was smiling calmly as he stood on his feet, satisfied with his power over the situation. The servant standing behind him had already decided that all the rumors about the young master's change in behavior were just lies. Guan, suppressing his feelings, took responsibility and decided to obey the order, even if it was humiliating. He leaned over the ground, crying and preparing to lick the dirt to avoid further problems. The villain continued to enjoy his power, as if feasting on a celebration of his own cruelty. But as soon as Guan approached the mud, everyone around him held their breath, watching this shocking sight. However, a young gentleman suddenly stopped him, asking what he was doing. Guan did not understand whether this was a joke or if he was seriously interested. The young gentleman said that whoever made the mess should clean it up, hinting at the responsibility of the real culprit. Finally, he stood up for the servants, and the girl was delighted to hear these words. The young gentleman turned to the lazy fool Kai Gan, pointing out that it was he who should put himself in order. Kai Gan was furious at this turn of events, not expecting such a development. However, the boy continued to insist that he clean up after himself, otherwise things would come to serious consequences. Chugan did not expect to be reprimanded in such a tone, and he was confused. Chiogai stopped for a moment, catching the boy's words. With a slight hint of mockery in his voice, he dubbed him Little Cat, recalling rumors of an unsuccessful courtship with a girl who had brutally rejected his attempts. Chiongai did not even realize that such a dismissive and sarcastic remark could spark a serious conflict. The main character approached Guantai and asked him about his condition with concern. "Why are you behaving like this, my friend? You shouldn't be doing this." He tried to understand what made him act this way, because Guantai could have avoided this mess. The master replied, "Why did you think you had to clean up after him? Guantu felt a mixed sense of pleasure and horror when he heard these words, for he saw a completely different look in his master's eyes. Something more than just disdain or indifference. It really frightened him. But he realized that he was no longer facing his familiar master, but someone completely different. Guantu bowed his head in gratitude, recognizing the new strength in the young master. The young master assured him that he would take control, advising the others to just watch. The crowd behind him could not fully understand what was happening, but they could sense that the situation was changing. When the swordsman commander standing behind him accepted his order with deep respect, it caused concern among his subordinates. Qinghai threw a mocking comment with a smile, claiming that a loser like him posed no threat to him. However, the young gentleman coldly warned him that he was ready to pretend he had never heard it if he apologized immediately. Even if you lick every corner of the floor with your evil tongue, the dirt will still be there, he added, emphasizing the senselessness of Qinghai's actions. Qinghai found himself at a crossroads. If he didn't apologize, what would happen to him? Our hero replied that he would be beaten, leaving him no choice. The guest, with a note of interest in his voice, suggested, "Why don't we check what this great and terrible descendant of the B family is capable of and what he is like?" Qinghai had been looking forward to this moment. It was hard for him to imagine how much he had been looking forward to this confrontation. The stranger attacked first, confident that with a single blow he could end the argument by rendering his opponent helpless. He believed that after his masterful blow, the opponent would only have to sweep the streets. Our reincarnator stood serenely, not showing any concern. With a sudden deft movement of his hand, he struck the attacker in the jaw. Everyone around him was amazed by this unexpected turn, horrified by what they saw. Qinghai grabbed his face and screamed loudly in pain and humiliation. This rascal was much more cunning than he seemed at first glance, which made him rethink his actions. Gathering all his strength in the fire of his soul, he decided that he would put an end to this, regardless of the consequences. The leader of the swordsmen warned our hero, emphasizing the need to use his hidden powers to stop the evil that could break free. The commander of the soldiers restrained his impulse to intervene, and the young man managed to dodge his guest's blow. He noticed that the fight was becoming more and more fierce and realized that if he missed at least one blow, it could cost him his life. However, the taste of battle only fueled his excitement, making every move more precise and decisive. And although this usually happened to previous owners of the body, he was sure that this time it would be different. The swordsmen standing nearby, watching the event, held their breath, waiting for the next move. The young lord demonstrated incredible skill, skillfully controlling the battle and influencing its course. He moved with incredible ease, which amazed everyone around him with his grace and strength. His unpredictable blows severely punished the attacker, bringing him closer to defeat each time. Continuing his journey, the young man realized that his opponent would not be able to withstand this confrontation. Qinghai was unwavering in his discontent, realizing that victory over his opponent was becoming unattainable for him. With each passing minute, the young master attacked with more and more force, demonstrating his superiority. Qinghai paid for his insolence with painful blows to his torso, which made him writhe in pain. Because of his ridiculous jokes and humiliation, these children who witnessed it will forever be traumatized. The young gentleman punished him more and more severely for his unworthy actions, leaving no room for compassion. And yet he decided to give him a chance to realize his mistake, even though it seemed unlikely. After many strong blows, the young lord struck the decisive blow that threw Qinghai away, at a great distance far from the place of battle. This blow made an incredible impression on all those present. They held their breath, their mouths agape with surprise and shock. Qinghai, who had always allowed himself to be bullied by others, using his status, now lay helplessly on the ground, not moving a muscle. The young warrior stood silently in the heart of the martial capital, demonstrating his strength and determination to uphold justice. The villain, disarmed by our hero, was picked up by his servants, who asked him if he realized the full scope of his actions. He denied it. "You saw for yourselves that I did not start it all." Refusing to remove the film from his face, he asked, "Is this how polite people behave?" The young gentleman wondered. After severe abuse and humiliation, this ruthless superior, having gotten out of the way, furiously ordered the young gentleman's life. He was filled with fierce hatred and bitter anger toward the young gentleman, and he could not tolerate such humiliation. It was a strict order that had to be carried out without question. However, his soldiers did not understand the order and hesitated. Qinghai grabbed one of his soldiers by the collar and said in a convincing manner, "Why are you still here? The order must be obeyed." The soldiers knew, however, that regardless of the difficulties that might arise during the implementation of the plan, they could not afford to eliminate the heir because of such problems. However, one of the swordsmen could not ignore the order and drew his sword. At that moment, Another swordsman from the B clan approached our hero. Addressing his comrades waiting ahead, he said in a calm voice that their lord had given the order in a state of confusion, so they could ignore it. He also took up his sword, emphasizing, "Better think about the consequences." An indescribable tension was building between them, and everyone in the crowd could sense that war was on the brink. Exchanging glances, the soldiers realized that everyone was ready for battle. If no one betrayed them, victory would be theirs. They decided to act cautiously, stopping the attack and putting their swords back in their sheaths, emphasizing that killing was not the answer. Such decisions should be made only by the head of the family, and only he has this right. However, such audacity could not be tolerated. The angry Kung, snatching the sword from the warrior, rushed at the young lord with sincere courage. He wanted only one thing, death, to put an end to his torment after the humiliation he had experienced. His attempts to stop him were in vain. Time was running out. He aimed his sword at the young master, but missed. At the moment when his hand was about to strike, the young bishop imposed a ban with his own power. His face remained impenetrable, betraying no emotion, emphasizing his control over the situation. In one swift movement, the young master broke the enemy's arm and snatched the sword from his fists. Using this skillful technique, he broke the arm of the villain, who choked on a desperate scream. As soon as he bent over in pain, the young master kicked him, knocking him down. Each kick further undermined the devotion and unwavering determination of the attacker, who could no longer resist. Exhausted from his severe injuries, Kung gave in to the sharp pain, calling for help, but no one was in a hurry to intervene. However, faced with such cruel accusations and actions, the young lord could not let him go unpunished. Unleashing all his strength, he struck a final blow to the enemy's face. This blow caused several teeth to leave the rascal's mouth, showing how serious the consequences were. The guards, gathered in a ring around him, watched the scene with intense attention, realizing that this was not just a punishment, but a real exposure of the scoundrel. Our hero, standing over the beaten enemy, wondered if he had suffered his wounds justly, or if it was just the result of a long injustice. After the fight, the swordsmen gathered around the body of their master, watching his condition with concern. Our hero called out, "Call a doctor! He can activate vital points and improve blood circulation." He also ordered to quickly inform the great leader of the clan about the events that had taken place. Guantu rushed over to the young nobleman and exclaimed in astonishment, "Have you lost your mind? How could you do this to a clan member? This is a black cloud over us. I see no solution." The pause in his voice was significant, but he finally suggested, "We have to run away, and then let the head of the family unravel this tangle." He strongly advised the young man to run away, because if he stayed here for a long time, he would inevitably run into the clan head, and it would end badly for him. The moment the young man looked at the merry man, he realized that if he ran away, he would bear all the blame, and he would be the main responsible. Thinking about it, he finally asked, "Is it realistic in this situation to just pick you up and leave?" Guan, realizing the gravity of the situation and terrified, insisted that they had to leave immediately. The young master remained calm and replied that there was no need to rush. The clan leaders were already appearing on the horizon, and the situation was changing. As they came closer, they witnessed a horrific scene unfold before their eyes. The young master joked that if his friend was worried about dying, he would definitely ask them to bury them together. Guan felt uncomfortable when he heard these words. It was too much for him, and he was overcome with anxiety. The clan leader approaching asked in a menacing tone, "What has happened here? What is going on in these lands?" His eyes burned with demand for explanation. His unworthy son accused him that this insignificant creature was trying to kill him. The leader gave his son a look of hatred and contempt. The boy and his friend stood firm, showing no fear of the leader. The leader turned to the surrounding soldiers with a question. "Is this true?" One of the warriors dared to tell the truth, describing all the events frankly. The clan leader, unable to contain his anger, slapped his son hard on the cheek. He considered him a fool, and he had good reason to do so. He, the fool, had allowed the young ruler of the Yan clan to find himself in such a desperate situation. The father stood before his son, fully realizing the consequences of this incident. The swordsman, wounded by the Yang clan, fell to the ground, unable to bear the weight of the events. The leader, caught up in his own thoughts, did not fully realize the seriousness of the situation. An atmosphere of tense anticipation gripped all those present, everyone waiting to see what would happen next. The leader of the clan, taking advantage of the moment of silence, attracted everyone's attention. In a hoarse voice, he asked, "How will you answer for this?" The father's eyes rested on his son, radiating a mixture of disappointment and expectation. But until the very end, no one could understand what exactly had happened or why it was possible. The father turned to the swordsman. "Tell us what happened here," hoping for clarity and understanding of the situation. The swordsman told everyone how young King had treated the servant unfairly, humiliating him and making him lick his saliva. However, he received a fair punishment from the boy for his actions. However, the head of the clan who came to visit could not understand how it was possible to harm his son for the sake of some servant. In a fit of anger, he raised his hand, ready to strike. The young man remained silent, not responding to the clan leader's words. The leader asked again, "How are you going to answer for this?" But the father stood up for his son, convincingly stating that if anyone should be held accountable in this case, it was Yang, the undisputed leader of the clan. These words were easy to say, but they had far-reaching consequences. The atmosphere was tense to the breaking point, and the leader's mood exploded with anger. With seething anger, he exclaimed, "What did you just say?" The real father replied that young Mr. Yang had not only used his inner strength, but had also sharpened his sword to kill his son. Although he was unarmed and everyone had witnessed the events, duty dictated that they had enough evidence to charge him with attempted murder. The young lord's servants were proud of his responsibility, while the servants of the visiting clan hung their heads in shame at their master's actions. However, the boy's father did not let up, saying, "If it were anyone else, I would have punished him for what he did with my own hands." He added, "I will not do anything that could harm your reputation." The visiting clan leader could barely contain his rage when he heard these words. The young man's father warned him that if the rumors of the incident spread, he would face ridicule not only as the head of the clan, but also his entire family. The clan leader caught a threat in his words that could not be ignored. Now he was faced with the question of how to respond. "What's the meaning of your words, son?" The father asked the hero with interest. "What are you trying to reveal to me with these words? What idea are they leading to?" The leader of the Yang clan found himself in deep confusion after this conversation. He felt humiliated and extremely depressed, as if he had been stripped of his power. After hearing his father's words, he saw in him a real strength and wisdom that he had previously underestimated. Until that moment, he had been convinced of his own insecurities. But in fact, he was deeply mistaken. After exchanging numerous remarks, the clan leader discreetly made it clear that the time for conversation was over. With a special emphasis on the significance of the moment, he pointed out to the family leader the need to fight a fair fight and settle the outstanding debt. The father gently replied to his son's request. "Of course, child." He also noted that it was time for the guests from his farm to go home, hinting at the end of an unpleasant situation. The villains realized that things had not gone as planned, and this was the greatest insult to their clan. Gathering in full force, the battalion turned around and moved forward, demonstrating their retreat. Everyone waited impatiently for them to leave, relieved that the conflict was over. After a moment of silence, the father turned to his younger son and gently asked him what had prompted him to do this. The son replied that he was offended by the actions of their relative and tried to force him to do what he thought people should do. The officers heard that they were called family, but deep down they realized that they were not really family. The father listened carefully to his son, but remained silent in response, thinking about what he had heard. He did not order his squad of swordsmen to follow him, leaving them in place. Our hero waited with bated breath for his father to leave, feeling the tension of the situation. Suddenly, however, he noticed that his servants were watching him closely, as if waiting for him to act. They remained silent, because everything that was necessary had already been said, and no one had anything to add. The boy, with gentle uncertainty in his voice, asked them if they were surprised by what had happened. The girl, who had been at the beginning of the whole story, expressed thoughts that made everyone open their mouths in surprise. The gentleman reassured them, emphasizing that they should not be afraid of this creature, even if it dared to do something insidious again. He assured them that they could rest assured that he and all the members of their family would be their protection. These words deeply impressed the servants and strengthened their trust in him. The squad of swordsmen fully shared the young man's opinion, feeling a sense of community and unity in the situation. These children, who served and were exhausted from their work, could not find words to express their gratitude. And when the surrounding soldiers retreated from them, the atmosphere began to calm down. Guan asked the young man if he himself was not afraid. He replied with surprise, "Why should I suddenly be afraid?" Guan too, who was aware of the situation, emphasized to the bailiff that the Yang clan, if they really came here, must be extremely powerful. After all, he said, it was considered the strongest clan in the entire Duan. The young gentleman wondered if Guan Tu had noticed the faces of their wards. They did not seem to show support for their leader, and they did not seem to have many supporters among their own. They were surrounded by truly loyal and courageous individuals, ready to lend a shoulder in any situation. But Guan could not accept this. There were too many enemies, and the threat seemed extremely serious. In the heart of a heated discussion, where the passion for the competition burned in the eyes of his opponents. The wise young man said, "Remember, victory is not in the number of troops. It is not so easy to start a war." His words vibrated with power and knowledge, offering a deeper look at the true costs of strength, wisdom, and choice. This momentary declaration was not just a statement. It was a manifesto for calm, deep analysis and reflection that leads to success, not hasty actions driven by emotion. The clan leader asked with doubt, "Has my son failed?" A cautious clan leader like Yang would not take a gamble without making sure that triumph was already in the bag. Only when he was sure of victory would he launch an offensive. When the decisive moment came, his son was not even noticed. His irritation was not caused by the fact of his son's beating, but by the realization that he had caused it. He could not stop himself, because his logic was powerless, and the realization that the causes and consequences of this event were completely different made his heart fill with bitterness. The young master realized that he was created for such situations, to stand firm and withstand difficulties. The servant could not understand the meaning. What was the point of all this? In response, he heard, "Go, get some rest. You have been through too much." Just as he was about to leave, a young man caught his attention. He thanked him sincerely for his great deed, feeling deeply grateful. Our heroes were happy about this, feeling proud of their actions. He smiled and said that this act would fill him with kindness for the rest of his life. The servant was relieved when the unexpected became apparent, and he realized that everything had gone well. The young master, analyzing the circumstances, realized that now was not the time for action, and decided to wait with further steps. The leader of the Yang clan wants revenge, and his determination in this matter is beyond doubt. They will try to take revenge while keeping their hands clean, so our hero must be proactive to avoid the trap. There was a tense atmosphere in the family room as the father closely watched the mother's actions. Lena, eagerly holding the old box in her hands, carefully opened it. Inside, under a layer of fine white velvet, was an extraordinary piece of jewelry. It was a necklace made with such skill that her breath stopped for a moment. Each stone, perfectly polished, and radiating deep hues like secrets sealed for centuries, sparkled under the light of the lamp. She turned the necklace around in her hands with trepidation, thinking about the stories it could tell. It was a family heirloom, kept and passed down from generation to generation, a source of deep respect and pride. In a mystical setting where intrigue and power games were the basis of clan life, a figure appeared wrapped in a veil of mystery. A woman with a sharp and deliberate voice whispered, "The leader of the Yang clan is so petty, he never worries for nothing. Questions of motives are alien to him." Her words, like the echo of distant storms, dispelled the silence. She revealed the essence of power struggles, where every step can be decisive. The atmosphere around the verbal duel became even thicker, promising to reveal more than one mysterious aspect of the Yang clan's world. She thought about her actions, because if she could realize her plans, it would allow them to— "You have no right to do this," the man told her firmly. "I will not allow it." But she argued that it was nothing more than a simple piece of jewelry. But the man argued, "This is not just a trinket, but the thing you value most in the world." She smiled and admitted that the most valuable things in the world to her were the fight and her son Duan. These words caused embarrassment to her husband, and he blushed. With a determined expression on her face, the woman said, "I finally gathered my courage. We have to protect our son, not meaningless trinkets." The man, gently looking into her eyes, asked, "Do you really believe in me?" The mother answered with confidence, "Yes, I do believe in you." Even after all his mistakes and deceptions, she still supports him. She emphasized that despite everything, he was still their son, and she would protect him. Hearing these words, the father realized the depth of the seriousness of the situation. He hugged her, feeling that together they could overcome any challenges. All of this was happening under the watchful eye of the young master, who was watching with understanding and compassion. He intended to apologize to his parents. However, unexpectedly, he overheard their conversation. This made him think. He began to believe that his rebirth in this world was a chance to live a life of his own choosing. Later, when he was deep in reflection, he was embarrassed by his action of helping Dana after accidentally overhearing their conversation. Since then, he could not shake the thought that he had changed his usual image for the sake of these two. He wondered if he would be able to cope now that he was no longer bound by his longing for his family. His angry temper did not let him rest at night. Conceiving of revenge is 10 times worse than carrying it out. In the heart of the mountainous landscapes of China, the cart was nobly making its way up. Guantoi was impressed by the nobleman's words, but could not fully understand them. "But he insists that they are now on their way to the Yang clan. Why is that?" He firmly stated that a solution to the problem had to be found. Guan did not fully understand what this guy was saying. What he was most concerned about was why he had chosen him to accompany him. The host had two answers, one that he liked and one that he didn't. He decided to say the one he didn't like first. Guang sighed and suggested, "Let's start with the second one." The owner turned to him, noting that he had described everything in such detail as if he had experienced it himself. At the beginning of this story, Guan bowed his head thoughtfully, recognizing that his thoughts were in line with the expectations of those around him. This is a moment of realization that external observations reflect his inner self, showing how transparent he can be in his reflection. And while this may seem like a small detail, it reveals deep dimensions of Guan's character, who, with a mix of complex emotions, accepts his thoughts and feelings as an integral part of his existence. Then Guang asked with interest, "What is the first answer?" He replied that the only person he could trust completely was Guang. The young man was surprised to feel an unpredictable attraction to a person who seemed to be indifferent to him. He admitted that he began to feel sorry for him, because he had a very limited social circle. Guang asked if he had a plan, and he replied that he was going to think about it. He was thinking, how much power does it take to change a person beyond recognition with a punch? In the country to which they were heading, all sorts of shadows were gathering, wishing to give him a warm welcome. If there is one among them who will hit him in the same way, perhaps he will change again and become the same as he was before the blow. Guan responded to his words in a frightened manner, feeling anxious about this prospect. The young master began to notice that jokes and fictions were appearing in his mind that he could not even think of before. This intrigued him. Was it because of his rejuvenation, or perhaps because he had been bound by chains of formality in his previous life? In the heart of the Yang clan, there is a clash of will and authority. The clan leader, filled with anger and eccentricities, realizes that someone he disparagingly calls a clumsy young man has managed to defeat his son in battle. At that moment, covered in bandages and knocked down, the son begged his father for revenge, to destroy Danny and the entire family of the one who had brought them pain. The father, with firmness in his voice, reassured his son, saying that this was exactly what he intended to do. He thought furiously, "How dare this rascal look up and ignore the shandan that was given to him from above?" The clan leader summoned his bloody dog. When his words reached his son's ears, he suddenly realized their true meaning. The father insisted that they would be deservedly punished for such treatment. Meanwhile, in the wagon, our hero was reading intently and turned to him with interest. "Is this by any chance the patriarch's secret technique?" "Yes, it is," he replied, whispering barely audibly. Referring to the shogun, he said that it was something incredible and not a martial art at all. And if the horsemen found out about it, there would be consequences. However, after he said that, his face only became filled with suspicion. Guanesh covered his mouth with his palms, trying to hold back his laughter. Then he laughed and said, "Come on, the white sword technique is a common occurrence." To which our hero replied, "It's time to tell you the meaning of what you just mentioned." Guan was surprised by his antics, and this only increased his surprise. But why was he talking like this? If the patriarch is a master of the white moonlight night sword technique, which the whole world is proud to know, why would he say such things? As he continued this dialogue, he only caused a wave of doubt and suspicion. But Guan could not understand what was coming next. He tilted his head, looking thoughtfully at something. Realizing that he had underestimated the situation, he was surprised at how bitterly wrong he was. If he had to evaluate this technique, he would have recognized it as slightly better than average. Given his desire to hide his true martial arts mastery, he needed to master this art to perfection. Guang watched him, remarking in surprise, "How unusual to see you with a book." Indeed, his experience with reading was limited to bar menus and announcements in adult recreation centers. "What kind of fighting skills does the young master propose to teach me?" asked Guang, studying him with interest. But Guan answered decisively, "No, I refuse." The young master realized that Guan was deceiving him, but he answered, "A man like you cannot even imagine it." But when Yang can do it, one wonders why he couldn't. It's a mystery that promises to reveal the depths of not only the character's abilities, but also to emphasize the uniqueness of his character, revealing new facets of what lies beyond the expected. Probably this happened because he came from a noble family, and perhaps from an early age he was tutored by a wise mentor. But to become an outstanding personality, it is not necessary to be born into a noble family or to have an outstanding mentor, as the young master proves. "But what do we really need?" asks Guan in surprise. Our hero remained silent, looking thoughtfully into the distance. The servant began to put forward the key factors of success: natural talent, physical fitness, willpower, and perhaps even magical powers. But there was something else very important that could help overcome all of this. So what was it that made Guan curious? He wondered. He catches the word that comes to mind: connection. A bridge of incomprehensible signs, but he still can't grasp their essence, our hero thinks. The young man's question is answered. It has to do with the Manhwa. Guan's face can fascinate anyone with its unique impressiveness. He doubts the significance of all this or tries to change the subject. Young Pan realizes that wisdom is still far from him, and he really believes that he was serious, joking only at first glance. He is convinced that connections are key to achieving status. The chariot stops, catching his eye. They step out of the shadows and walk straight into the heart of the city. As they reach the threshold of the hotel, they are already making plans for the future. He hadn't even considered renting a room, not hoping for an invitation. It seemed he would have to spend the night on the train, but the young gentleman assured him that he had only taken one room, and that did not mean he would make him sleep on the street. He explained that they were going to share one room with 2 beds and asked where the problem could be. However, the young man said that he was uncomfortable sharing a bedroom with a younger owner. "It doesn't fit," he said. "I would prefer to sleep in the guest room." The young master offered, quite unexpectedly, to have a drink before bed, to which he, surprised, responded immediately, as he was stunned that someone would want to spend time with him in this way. However, the young man asked him if there was anyone else there besides him. He also asked for some simple snacks and drinks. The maid, who stood on the threshold, addressed them with exquisite manners, reflecting the hotel's true hospitality. "Please wait just a moment," inviting him to sit down next to her. Young Pan clearly showed uncertainty on his face. Guan felt that this was the first time in his life that someone had invited him to such an unusual moment. They shared a table, laughing and enjoying their drinks, and never once mentioned that they were to share the same room. Once in the new world, the master feels that his knowledge and experience have been reduced to nothing, leaving him defenseless, as if he were an ignoramus. When he discovers that he has inspired fear in the young boy, the master realizes his new reality with a touch of humility and responsibility. The moment he reached for the bottle of alcohol, Guan asked for permission to pour the glass himself. However, the young master poured the glass himself and said laconically, "Just drink." But Guan replied, "You are the older one. You should be in the lead." His old beliefs did not allow him to live calmly and accept this view. He raised his glass and with a slight smile said that he would soon get used to the new taste of life. "It will be just one sip, but it will stay with me for the rest of my life, reminding me of your kindness." Young Pan, with a slight smile, jokes that he still needs to pour, and suddenly he was seized by a burning thought that he had an epiphany. The young gentleman decided to take him with him. He simply realized the idea that had been growing in his mind. The young master was so impressed by these words that he even choked on the alcohol he had just drunk. Guan continued to talk about how much he appreciated his attitude, which had impressed him so deeply. He remained silent despite all the challenges, tirelessly believing in his rightness with unwavering firmness. He sighed, preparing to share something very important. As he was deep in thought, he bitterly recalled the saying that a cow is fed the best food before slaughter. This thought did not leave him. Night was falling, and Guan still did not dare to ask about his interlocutor's combat abilities. This question deeply interested our hero. Guan was especially proud to emphasize his fighting skills, telling how he managed to defeat that villain. Our hero remarked that he might have fallen behind lately, but what really worried the servant was that he had only been training for 10 days. The young master replied in the affirmative that 10 days was enough time to deal with the pile of garbage that Guan was referring to. Guan watched him carefully, not missing a single detail. He was incredibly surprised that the young master could change so dramatically. The master answered his silent question. "Perhaps I have blossomed a little later." Guan did not refuse the next glass that was offered to him. He emphasized, however, that he had to limit his curiosity so as not to lose his temper. However, he wondered if he would no longer undergo changes, or if he would stop there. The master replied that he had no intention of stopping there. But Guan persisted and asked, "Please promise me that you are changing and will no longer be the same as you were before." The young man thought for a moment. What is the value of a promise that is only made in words? Guan emphasized that this was important to him, because he wanted to hear it with his own ears to see for himself the change. The young master, looking deeply into his eyes over the rim of his glass, replied. Tension hung over Guan, growing more and more like a storm cloud ready to explode at any moment. But he suddenly smiled, diffusing the situation, and promised something that made Guan breathe a sigh of relief. With a sigh of relief, Guan admitted that he was skilled in martial arts, and was actually much stronger than he had imagined. How can you hide such skill? He asked, looking intrigued. To survive in this world, you need to keep at least a third of your power secret, he explained, hinting at his hidden abilities. He deliberately played the role of a loser so as not to attract too much attention and remain invisible. Everything changed after Lady Wan hit me. I realized that I couldn't live like that anymore. It was a moment of epiphany, he admitted, trying to convey his discovery. The hero realized that it was a lie, but he was forced to believe these words, having no other choice. He continued to pour the young man a drink, as if to encourage him. Come on, one more. Pour it. The young man, under the influence of alcohol, felt anxious, realizing that he was getting used to such attention. Surrounded by intoxication, the young man began to feel that this situation was becoming dangerous for him, like a noose gradually tightening around his neck. Young Pan expresses his consent, his voice sounding firm and decisive. The iguana is in an unusual state of excitement, feeling strangely thrilled by what is happening. Perhaps we should buy alcohol together, he suggests, demonstrating his intention to join in. He accepts the glass from the young host's hands, feeling part of something new. For the first time in his life, he feels what it's like to receive attention and benefits from others, because he usually served others like a servant. This feeling is a real privilege for him. Suddenly the young gentleman smiles and says, "Speaking of drinks," drawing attention to the next step. "This is the first time in my life I've ever felt so intoxicated," he says, as if discovering a new world for the first time. They steadily continue their journey towards the city of Dongping, which is their next stop. As they move along these paths, they ponder their plans. It remains a mystery what exactly they plan to accomplish. The mystery remains unsolved, as does who lives on the other side. This mystery has yet to be solved. These words made Guan uneasy, as if a cold wind had passed through his soul. He stopped for a moment and told the young gentleman that he wanted to take responsibility for this. Realizing the danger, realizing the risks, he knew that this step could lead to serious consequences. The master warned him that it was a very dangerous business. If he was caught, it would raise many questions from the authorities. It might even lead to cruel punishments, such as the burning touch of hot metal or cutting off his fingers. "Calm down, everything will be fine," he replied, adding, "If they ask, I will tell them your location. After all, you asked me to do this." "That's right, young master. Be sure to tell them, for that is true wisdom and devotion." He smiled, hinting at his intentions. Guang replied with a slight smile. Of course it was a joke. Who would have thought of such profound wisdom? "Yes, it was me," the young master confidently confirmed, his voice full of determination. "This is the height of loyalty, devotion to the last breath. But I do not demand this from this young man." "Doesn't the echo of betrayal sound in your heart when silence answers your calls?" he asked, as if challenging me. "But in any case, it is considered wise loyalty," the master said, adding a touch of wisdom to his words. Guang admitted that the task was not easy, but he reassured him. "You can rely on me. I always find a way out of a situation." He gives him full freedom of action, allowing him to decide everything at his own discretion. Guan assured him of his return, promising that everything would work out well, despite the difficulties. However, he realizes that he has to go his own way alone, being responsible for his own decisions. Suddenly he stops, feeling that he has forgotten something important. Turning, he approaches the young owner, ready to say the last word. He mentioned that even if he had promised support, he might be the last one to come to his defense, hiding in the comfort of some Ukrainian town. Guan replied that if it was convenient for him, he would do so, because he had decided to take full responsibility. Guan made sure that the defense on the other side would be his responsibility, feeling somewhat confident. Stepping aside, he headed decisively toward the city, leaving everything else behind. "As soon as I get back, you should have a drink on me," Guang said jokingly, trying to keep his mood light. An interesting thought, the young gentleman thought, watching him thoughtfully. Despite everything, he still believes in Guang, feeling trust in him. His unbreakable friendship with Guang Tai cannot just end like that. It seems impossible. And when he realizes his plan, there will be a chance for a new beginning. The bond between him and Qianhu will remain strong despite all obstacles. The young lord realizes that it has been several days since he last saw Guan. He is eagerly awaiting Guan's return, but it is delayed, causing anxiety. Perhaps he has already been captured and is being held to answer questions. Or perhaps he has even been killed, leaving him no chance of returning. Suddenly, the door opened sharply, and a figure entered the room. A man appeared in the shadow of the door, his face hidden under a huge hat, and he held a sword in his hand. "In this great world, it is undoubtedly a gift of fate that we have met today. So let's celebrate it," he said. The young lord met him with a smile, welcoming his friend. "How did you manage to have fun?" he asked, hoping to hear interesting stories. But what happened to this exciting young gentleman? What adventures are waiting for him? The I'm Not in the Tank clan begins to gather talented travelers under the leadership of a mysterious figure known as the Blood Potter. Under the guidance of this mysterious leader, the clan plans to make great changes in the world. "They're raising an army of bloodthirsty homeless people?" asked young Pan, concerned about the situation. "They seem to be recruiting a lot of people. Maybe planning an attack on our village. They also spread rumors accusing you of beating their son when he allegedly caught you trying to rape a girl." Young Pan smiled, realizing that he had created so many circumstances that no one could question. Even if people believe in something unbelievable, you never allowed yourself to do such things, even in fights. Rumors, as always, are greatly exaggerated. I wondered how you knew about them. Did you sneak into the lair yourself, pretending to be someone else? He agreed with everything, but one maid revealed all the paintings to him, and he managed to enlist her support. These words puzzled the young master with their unexpected determination. He smiled and admitted that he understood the feelings of people like him, because he was one of them. Hearing this, the master laughed out loud, noting that fate had indeed smiled on him. Among the gossips, there was a rumor that young Qigong had brutally killed one of the maids. Because of this, he doesn't have many friends in the Yang clan. Our protagonist realizes that he was lucky when he met this maid. He realizes that if he had chosen the wrong path, no amount of luck would have helped him. He learned about the bloodthirsty dog and the people going to war. He remembered how he bought some trinkets and made his way inside, getting lost among the travelers. He was overcome with deep fear, so he did not take anything with him, which caused him bitter regret. In the shining stars of fate, the young Pan smiled mysteriously when asked about his achievements. "My achievements have exceeded my wildest expectations. I have reached heights that rise above the ordinary, much higher than I could have imagined." His words, full of strength and wisdom, reflected his deepest dreams, which had now become a reality. However, he looked down and admitted that he had another important secret up his sleeve. Our protagonist asked curiously, "So what did you find out?" Guan answered, and I immediately realized that his face really has a magical effect on girls. This news threw the young master a little off balance. He straightened his curls and emphatically said that they needed to go back and inform the patriarch. The boy firmly stated that they would not go back, defending their decision. Why don't they return with such valuable information? This question arises for everyone who sees the situation. He answered that they should finish what they started, and this idea seems exciting and risky at the same time. We find ourselves back in the room of the Yang clan leader, where the girl's voice comes from. She is holding her clothes tightly, saying through her tears that she already has someone in her heart whom she is marrying, and she does not expect him to make unjustified advances. The villain, lying on the bed, barely spoke. "Is this really possible?" And the girl replied, "Yes, I cannot help you." "What words from the mouth of this bastard? Does he deserve to die right now?" Hearing this, the girl was filled with anxiety. This rascal is demanding that she immediately fulfill his desire. Otherwise, she will lose him. Let him decide what is more important to her. Without hesitation, she burst into tears, but took off her outer garment. He contemplated the scene in front of him and said that he no longer needed to take the life of the man she was going to marry. Seeing how she obeyed him, but when the girl dared to do so, she was stopped. Suddenly, the door to the room opened, creating a tense atmosphere. With a shudder, she realizes that an unexpected guest has broken her privacy. The rascal asked with surprise and anger, "Who dares to enter?" Suddenly, quite unexpectedly, feet crossed the threshold, and a voice rang out. "Do not be afraid. I have just neutralized your pressure point, so you will be immobile for a while." The child said, "Not all men in this world are scoundrels like him." The mysterious masked young man walked past the girl, heading straight for the scoundrel. With unshakable confidence, he declared that an evil dog had bitten the villain. This, of course, does not mean that all dogs are like him. The rascal, stretched out on the bed, asked the other man eagerly, "Who am I? Tell me quickly, because I'm only here temporarily." At that moment, overwhelmed with emotions and tears, the girl fainted, unable to withstand the tension. This mysterious ninja embraces her, holding her tightly and gently like a protector. "Forget everything that happened today. Live happily ever after," he says, looking into her eyes. On the verge of life and death, with a trembling heart, the guy lay on the bed, entangled in memories and fear. He tried to reach out to those he once knew, but there was no response. His mind was filled with loneliness and a quiet desire to hear words of comfort that never came. Horrified, he suddenly realized that he recognized the villain. But how was that possible? Suddenly, the ninja quickly plunged the knife into his body, completing this act of revenge. Drops of blood scattered across the room, filling it with their bloody hue. This cunning man, sensing death, begs, "I made a mistake. Stop, please." but the ninja replies with cold determination. When this child begged you. When the crowds begged you for forgiveness, what was your answer? His voice was sharp as a blade. The eyes of the bloody villain were filled with tears of despair. But he did not receive pity. Only contempt poured down on him like mud, leaving him in the darkness of his sins. The ninja did not pity him, feeling the deep justice of his choice and not deviating from his principles. At this time, the head of the Yang clan was talking to his assistant, who was trying to convince him to rethink the situation. If you attack this family, you will provoke the anger of many residents, he warned. However, the head did not pay attention to the opinions of ordinary people, because his son, unfortunately, was no longer among the living. Can the prosecution of criminals provoke anger? He wondered. But the counselor realized that the whole problem arose because of the stupid act of his son, who was the first to start killing. The leader, masquerading as an eccentric sect, had hired a large group of vagabonds to destroy Clan B, and the leader urged the vice president not to restrain him, considering it foolishness. He urged him to change his mind and cancel the whole operation. However, the leader uttered words that made the advisor uncomfortable and uncertain. He walked in and immediately asked a question. Why are you interested? Is it really important? His appearance did not match the inner impulse that was felt in the room. A man in a strange costume stood before him. He was called the Bloody Potter. He addressed the president with a question, asking for further action, because there was no time for hesitation. As he knows well, vagrants are those who do not care about anyone around them, and at a critical moment they can betray without any remorse. If they don't get a quick and clear answer, they will leave instantly, leaving the plan unfulfilled. The leader assured me that everything would go according to plan, and we would act according to our plan. And the leader of the Yang clan emphasized that it was not only because of the death of his son. Even though the family's influence has diminished, they still have a significant impact on many aspects of life in the region. And when they defeat their enemies, their power will double, strengthening their position. But the vice president emphasized to the leader that the secret of their survival lies in the army's unwavering trust in their patriarch. The chairman gave his deputy a cold look that did not conceal reproach, and ironically asked him if he thought he was better than the leader himself. He answered no, but the leader took him at his word. Trust was everything. Is it possible that our cities are ruled by only two forces, power and vulnerability? It seems to be a rule where the strong rule and the weak obey. This is the meaning of Qianhu. The strong control and the weak obey, and this rules society without reference to any religion. However, even without religious affiliation, the role of an orthodox sect does not suit us. The vice president stood firm. He assured them that if they dared to attack the Bai family, he would leave their clan. The leader gave him a look of condemnation and said sharply, "You dare to put conditions before me? Get the hell out of Glass before I personally end your existence!" The vice president replied menacingly. Hearing this, he was deeply shocked and frightened, for expulsion from the clan was unthinkable to him. However, the leader did not hesitate. He sharply declared, "Get out, otherwise he will kill you." The vice president could not comprehend how he could say such a thing after 20 years of faithful service. He clenched his fist and said he wasn't going to brag. But if it weren't for his efforts, the clan would never have reached this scale. He spent years devoting himself to the development of the clan, and all his hard work was in vain when the leader said those terrible words. As he was leaving, he still managed to instruct him to make sure that no one from the family left the designated place that day. "Don't worry, we won't miss a single soul from the Bai family. We will keep every one of their guard dogs under strict supervision," he said. Hearing these words, the clan's vice president, who had once been expelled, was furious. How can they act so ruthlessly? It was completely unacceptable. He had dreamed of raising the prestige of his Yang clan to the heavens, convinced that he had to go his own way until he was kicked out. Suddenly, however, he spotted someone on the grounds. It was a ninja holding a sword, his cloaked face full of determination to fight. "Who are you?" asked the vice president, holding his weapon at the ready with a stern look. The ninja, looking at him, said, "You are ready for anything, accepting the realities as they are." You may have been confused by the words, but the ninja explained that you were seeking to save your life by protecting evil, like your leader. The vice president felt his extraordinary power when he suddenly passed by, and he was powerless to do anything. The ninja warned him that if the vice president wanted to avoid all his efforts being in vain, he had to stay here waiting. "You are facing a key moment in your life," the ninja said, emphasizing the importance of the moment. And just then, silence fell around him. The vice president held his breath, sensing something inevitable was coming. The time for change was inexorably approaching, and the vice president had to prepare for it. He did not know how to react, so he simply decided to ignore the warning. The ninja stepped forward and opened the door. He entered the room where the atmosphere was tense. The hellhound and its leader stood in front of him, both looking wary, as if they were seeing a worthy opponent for the first time. The air was filled with a sense of danger and intrigue. "Who are you?" The leader's voice was loud, filling the room with the weight of the unspoken. "I am the heir of those you seek to destroy." At first, the leader did not realize who he was talking about. Who was this son? But amid the din of voices, he caught a familiar sound. It was the voice of... "The white data tells you who I am," he said, hinting at his true identity. The leader thought, "Can this fellow be considered a friend? How could he behave like this? But most importantly, how did he get here in the first place?" Despite all the circumstances, the leader decided to eliminate him without saying the usual "destroy that evil one" to the hellhound. But the hellhound offered to solve the problem for 5,000 yuan. The leader responded with deep aggression, feeling that the time of his death was approaching. However, the hellhound's cunning and commitment to the terms of the contract indicated otherwise. The right time and place had not yet come. "If you don't want to pay, take care of it yourself," the hound added. The leader lost his temper, admitting his desire for money, but still agreed to the price. The hound of hell realized that he had achieved his goal, spreading his paws in triumph. Pulling out his mace, he addressed the child. "Accept my gratitude. Thanks to you, I will earn another 5,000 on top." However, our hero heard himself being called the vagabond, pretending to be a hell potter, which caused him to feel a new wave of indignation. With an angry laugh, the hellhound turned to his victim. "My name is known even to children, and I hope you realize what you are about to die from." And with crazy agility, the hound entered the fray, ready to deliver a fatal blow. It attacked our hero with all its extraordinary strength, leaving him no time to think. The blow was so strong that it knocked out the door and broke through the wall of the room, leaving a trail of destruction. When he finds himself back in his body, the hero realizes that his energy has decreased significantly, becoming no more than that of a 5-year-old child. He realizes that he must now be careful and weigh his every move with extreme precision. But the shadow hound did not stop its attack, catching his speed even for a split second. Our hero skillfully dodged the blows, and where the hellhound struck, there was only devastation. He realized that despite his slowness, missing at least one attack would be tantamount to disaster. Without the ability to anticipate the enemy's attack, he could have disappeared without a trace. In addition, he had not yet fully mastered his new body, which made him even more vulnerable. Relying on his vast experience in combat, he sought a way to survive. Despite the difficulties, he even began to feel excited about this battle and the new body he was about to experience. For a moment, he even forgot how much time had passed since he had been on the brink of life and death, witnessing a murder. With waves of blood and bad weather, he entered the battle like a dog of war, feeling the long-forgotten adrenaline. He enthusiastically faced the battle, holding his sword with both hands ready for any challenge. Since he became the strongest in the world, Talon's life has been filled with peaceful days, devoid of real challenges. It was only now that his true calling had left him that life became incredibly boring. But now he felt the very spark of life he had been searching for so long. He witnessed a fierce chase, and the extraordinary power of his opponent's gaze stunned him. However, he outsmarted his opponent by suddenly slyly hitting himself on the head, confusing him. Using the asura sword art, the pursuing soul technique at the entry level, he easily severed the head of the hellhound. The hound fell to the floor, struck dead by the boy, leaving him the victor in this battle. Seeing this, the leader realized that the situation was out of control. What had actually happened could not be denied. The outcome was obvious. His eyes lost their former confidence, and he realized that the blow passed through him almost imperceptibly and the guy literally pierced the enemy's body. But when it happened, he didn't even notice. The guy moved with incredible speed like a real ninja in action. The leader, lying on the ground, looked at him and asked, "How did you learn this?" Raising the mace of the hellhound, he replied, "When you learn, it will be difficult to understand. Even if I explain it, it will be difficult to understand." The leader turned to him. "Why do you want the weapon of the Hound of Hell? Don't tell me you want to make it look like we had a fight." But he insisted, "That's exactly what I'm going to do as soon as everything is settled. The arrogant gang planned to escape after you were killed, but I decided to prevent that by promising them everything they wanted. With all these benefits, he will be able to support his family and provide them with a better future." He revealed the secret of the hiding place, where an endless pile of gold and untold treasures worth more than 30,000 shone. Although these were just words, the man emphasized that his circumstances were far from the best. But if he is forgiven, he can get everything that exists here. He convinced me that this is not just insensitivity, but only the beginning of new opportunities. If you give him life, you will get everything. But if you execute a death sentence, you will be left with nothing, because his treasures cannot be found without his help, he said. Our hero noted that he had already heard about the mighty Qianhu, a creature that was both extremely strong and vulnerable, without the third property. What you didn't say before. The strong survive, the weak die. Where's the mistake? He asked. It seemed to him that today they were not at the top of their game. Our hero waved his sword, signaling the end of this villain, and once and for all, he destroyed his insidious plans for the family, putting an end to his criminal actions. Only the shadow of this event knows the truth about what really happened. After completing the case, our hero shouted, "Come in!" The vice president burst in, not knowing what a twist fate had in store for him, but when he entered, his eyes saw a horrifying picture. The Hellhound and the Patriarch seemed to have inexorably left this world. Young Pan-White Dan, single-handedly, was able to defeat the most powerful warriors of the clan, and the young master turned to him saying, "From today on, I congratulate you, for you are now the head of the Yang sect." The vice president, and now the new leader of the Yang cult, was surprised by this news to the core. The next day, after returning from his grand task, the young master felt tired, but also excited about the successes that had accompanied him. He was surprised to see how his best friend, with whom he had grown up together, had been worried about him all these days. His concern and warm greeting warmed the master's heart. Guan, an old friend of the master, spent the whole night waiting for him to return, keeping an eye on the road where his friend was supposed to come from. The master's sister shared that Guan was unable to sleep all night, and his excitement and nervousness became palpable to the whole family. The moment when the young master finally entered the room was the climax. Guan's eyes shone, recognizing the long-awaited features in his friend's face. The sight of his faithful friend caused a flood of emotions in the master. He could barely hold back the tears that came to his eyes. "Little brat, you really were worried about me," the young master said with a mixture of irony and warmth as he walked toward Guan. Guan quickly wiped away his tears and suggested that they have lunch together to celebrate his safe return. He was overjoyed to see his friend unharmed. A sense of relief swept over Guan as he took a deep breath, feeling the peace gradually return to his heart. Finally, addressing the maid, the master ordered them to bring the best dishes they had and double the portions. He wanted this dinner to be a true celebration of gratitude and friendship. A large table decorated with openwork tablecloths and silverware was set with the best dishes. The air was filled with the aromas of delicacies, and several bottles of expensive alcohol stood nearby. In the luxurious hotel lounge, their deep dialogue about their recent adventures unfolded, each word echoing against the sound of clinking glasses and soft music. Gong, his voice eager, asked about the events. "Is it true that the Bloodhound destroyed the Yang clan syndicate and took all their wealth?" His words were filled with surprise and doubt. The young master, carefully turning the cup of tea in his hands, sighed. "Yes, something like that did happen," he replied, withholding details. "But didn't you say that the hand of the Bloodhound was behind it?" asked Guang, wanting to clarify the details. The young man shrugged his shoulders, leaving room for speculation. Guan pressed inquisitively, "Do you really think that it was just a coincidence that you ended up where the massacre took place and defeated the leader of the syndicate?" His suspicions revealed the depth of his distrust. "There is logic in what you say, but it's not that simple," the young master replied, hinting at a more complex picture of events. Guan was at a loss, unable to find a logical explanation for the events that seemed too incredible for chance. "Antony, did you really understand everything correctly?" he asked, looking for confirmation. The young master, with a dark expression on his face, confessed, "I decided that they should all die. Every single one of them." Guang involuntarily jumped up in his chair when he heard these words. "But how are you going to do it?" His voice trembled with anxiety and intrigue. "And speaking of the wealth I allegedly stole, as alleged about the blood dog, it wasn't theft," the young master said, adding an important nuance. "It was compensation for moral damages." Guan repeated the word that had come out of the blue in this conversation with surprise. "Compensation?" "Yes, compensation. He killed my parents, tried to destroy everything in our family. It was my right to compensation," explained the young master, revealing the motives for his actions. "Thus, everything I took is not considered stolen. It was taken legally as compensation," he added with firmness. Guan wondered how much was taken, but he suddenly stopped, saying, "Please don't tell me. I don't want to know." His hesitation revealed an inner conflict. "Perhaps someday I will tell you more," the young master replied. But Guang calmed himself with the thought, "When you know too much, you are the first to die. So I don't want to know too much." The young master appreciated Guan's understanding and point of view, feeling some respect for his desire to stay away. But still, I took 32,000 thalasses, he revealed, showing the real extent of the compensation. If I had stayed in the Yang Syndicate and started trading, I could have earned much more, but I decided not to. He shared his thoughts on what he could have done. After all, this could have led to many unpredictable events, and my existence could have been revealed if I acted greedily and without reason, he continued, emphasizing that Chen Yun realized that he was the heir and had to act carefully. He mistook him for a sleeping dragon who skillfully concealed his martial arts skills. Bowing before him, Guan swore his allegiance. Of course, he was not naive enough to fully trust this impulsive devotion. He decided to keep him at a distance. But the young master did not leave Guan's mind, and he remembered that the young master had also killed the Yang clan's commander-in-chief. Yes, that's exactly what happened, the young man replied calmly, confirming what Guang had said. These words upset Guang a little, but he tried to remain composed. The young man replied, "Do you really feel sorry for him, even after all he did?" "His son was still young, even though he was a rascal," said Guang, expressing his opinion. "But what difference does it make whether a person is young or old when it comes to right and wrong? If you deserve to die, you must die," the young master commented harshly, emphasizing his position. It was hard to disagree with these words, and he added, "If you think I killed him for you, you are mistaken. I was going to kill him that day." After these words, they both had some things to think about, and silence fell between them. The young master looked thoughtfully at his friend, observing his reaction to the thoughts he had expressed. The young master's gaze rested on Guan, and he was convinced that his friend was indeed kind and loyal. This calmed his heart. Deciding that it was time to trust, he prepared to tell Guan some very important information. Pouring alcohol into his glass, the young master said, "I plan to teach you a real martial art. It won't be the imitations you've seen before, but a real serious martial art," he clarified, emphasizing the importance of his words. Guan's surprise knew no bounds, and he openly opened his mouth in delight at this proposal. "Isn't this a dream? Are you serious?" he asked, trying to understand if this was really happening. But the young master stood firm, his determination only increasing Guan's confidence, and he was even sweating with excitement. Guan hesitated, remembering his age. "But I'm almost 25. Isn't it too late to start?" The young master replied convincingly, "Just trust me." Guan realized that he was already old enough to begin such training. But if the young master became his master, age might not be so important. He thought carefully about his decision, realizing that it would affect his entire future life. "So, do you really want to learn a martial art?" he asked again, looking for confirmation from his friend. Holding his breath and thinking deeply again, Guang prepared himself for the answer. "Yes, I want to learn," exclaimed Guang with a determination that had not been characteristic of him for a long time. "Why do you want to do this?" the boy asked, trying to understand his motives more deeply. Guan explained, "This incident made me think. I felt that I also wanted to change, not just in words but in deeds. I want to change myself from the inside out. To stop being who I was and become a better version of myself," he added with palpable sincerity. The young master then asked another important question. "Why are you so kind to me, even though you used to be completely different?" "Because I used to be a lowly person who bullied you, but you showed me that it is possible to change," Guan replied. Guan continued, "That's because something like that happened to me once, and I decided I had to change." "And what exactly could have happened?" the young master asked, trying to figure out what had prompted Guang to make such a radical change. "I remember when I was 15 and you were 10. You were very good to me when I was sick and had a high fever. That moment had a big impact on me," Guan recalled, reflecting on the past and its influence on current decisions. When Guan lost consciousness, the first thing he saw when he came to was the face of the young master, who had not left him in trouble. The young master carefully helped him recover by applying cold towels to his forehead. The caring attention he showed then, helping Guang to recover, was unlike anything Guang had ever seen before. "I still can't forget his concerned look when he looked at me," Guang recalled, feeling deeply grateful. "You've never looked at me so sincerely before, and it left a deep mark on my soul," he continued, expressing his emotions. The young master listened to him, feeling somewhat bewildered. All this was a bit incomprehensible to him, but at the same time important. Deciding to answer, the young master said, "Perhaps it was foolish to think that I was obsessed with such things, but I'm sure that for some people, such experiences can be extremely useful. The martial art you will be learning is the 7 South Sea techniques," he announced, revealing the details of the upcoming training. Guang was amazed to hear about this opportunity and the uniqueness of these techniques. And one more very important thing the young master added. And from now on, you are no longer my servant. Now you are not just my subordinate, you are my friend, my support, the young master said, emphasizing the new equality in their relationship. Guang rose from his seat, feeling different after hearing these words. He took a deep breath, a gesture that surprised the young master with its determination and meaning. Guang then knelt down in front of him and crossed his arms in front of him, showing his respect and readiness for his new role. The young master watched this carefully, for he had not expected such a reaction from Guan. I have heard that this is how martial artists bow in Qianhu, how martial artists show their respect. Guang explained his gesture. The young master appreciated it and replied, You're doing well. You're doing the right thing, recognizing Guan's efforts and intentions. Looking at his new friend and support, the young master drank a cup of tea and thought that he had not really planned to take Guang as a disciple. With a gesture of reflection, he decided to accept Guan's respectful bowing. This was the end of their in-depth dialogue in the hotel, marking the beginning of a new phase in their relationship and their shared journey of martial arts training. After these events, they returned to their hometown, where they felt more secure and confident. The young master shared everything with his father, telling him how dangerous and insidious the syndicate leader was who wanted them dead. He was much more evil than we could have imagined. If I hadn't met the blood dog, we would have been in big trouble, the young master shared with his father. The father thought about it and said, Perhaps the heavens really helped us. What a blessing that everything turned out the way it did. However, we have to pay back the debt to the Yang Syndicate that they owe us, the father said, emphasizing the need to settle old accounts. The young master understood this and was prepared for this development. He knew that his father would express such an opinion because he was an influential and intelligent man. I couldn't even think that we owe the Yang Syndicate, not Jan or Joe to us, he thought. Turning to his father, he said, I hope they're not too upset, Dad. Such respect and trust from his son deeply impressed the father, as he had not heard him say such words for a long time. The mother, observing the changes in her son, could not help but feel proud. His maturity and determination made her happy. The father, noticing the fatigue on his son's face, suggested that he get some rest. Go and get some rest. The boy agreed without objection, feeling the need to rest. As he went to say goodbye, he realized that this was the first time he was actually talking to his father. In his previous life, he had been raised by his mother from an early age, and his father was not in his life. Although it was their first conversation, he didn't feel bad about it. He felt a certain connection and understanding. The next day, the boy came to the Yang clan. He brought a large purple sack with him and threw it in front of the new clan leader. The new clan leader asked in surprise, What have you brought? What are these gifts? The young master replied, These are 3,000 thalas that I have saved up. This is part of the debt we owe to your clan. The leader of the clan, Yang, expressed surprise. How did you manage to accumulate so much money? The young master replied that he had been saving the money for his own wedding. The young man realized that he could not give the Yang clan all the money he had received since Yang Zi's death. He decided to act carefully so as not to arouse suspicion. When the clan leader heard about the wedding, he asked why the young master decided to give the money to them. Please use it to put our swordsman's squad in order, the young master asked. He also added that he was not doing this because of the money, but because he did not want anyone to think that they were staying in the clan just for the money. The young master explained, We cannot let their families suffer for lack of money. The clan leader heard these words and saw the young master's compassion. He realized that if the young master spoke like that, he should give the money to the clan leader, not keep it to himself. But I don't think you'd take the money if my father offered it to you, the young master replied, noting that this was only his assumption. He realized that this man was incredibly dedicated to his work. Even if his father offered to give him the whole sum, the young master was confident in his ability to solve all the issues with a number of swordsmen on his own. He will always refuse his father's money because he wants to earn his own reputation and independence. The young master explained, You are not just a commander of a large group of swordsmen for us. You are the backbone of our family. If something happens to you, it will affect our whole family. The commander of the swordsmen asked in surprise, What are you talking about? Our head is the strength of our family, not me. The young master was pleased to hear this reaction, because he appreciates loyal and honest people. He thought it would be difficult to find such a person in the clan. You're right, but you and your squad are helping our head to be that pillar. Take this money as recognition for your contribution, he replied. It's for the good of our head and the whole clan, the young master added. Seeing the confidence in his words, the commander thought about it. Okay, I promise to use this money only for the training needs of the unit, he replied. The young master bowed and expressed his deep gratitude for his service and honesty. Despite these words, the commander's gaze changed. He no longer saw the young master as the person he had been before. If it's okay, I'll leave, the young master said, feeling that his mission here was complete and he could continue on his way with a clear conscience. At the last moment, the commander stopped him. Wait! I am very grateful to you. My gratitude knows no bounds, he continued, showing his sincere admiration. The young master was touched by such warm words. It was an important recognition of his efforts. As he left, he thought, now Guang doesn't have to say anything more. He will show the results of his work himself. Over the next few days, the situation changed markedly, and everything around them sparkled with new colors. The atmosphere among the swordsmen became much more pleasant. Not only the swordsman, but the whole family felt a lift in spirit. The young master was sure that his friend Guang had also changed, because the rumors of the payment of the swordsman's outstanding wages had greatly improved the mood. People began to speak differently, and the atmosphere changed so much that it became possible to announce the recruitment of new swordsmen. For the first time in a long time, the atmosphere in the family became more lively and optimistic. However, the problem with his internal chi energy remained unresolved. It was a problem that he had to deal with on his own, to find ways to restore and balance his inner strength. The young master used every minute of his time, except for the necessary hours of sleep, to perfect his art in the heavenly martial circulation of consciousness. With this technique, he could accumulate internal energy 3 times faster than with conventional training. However, even with this advantage, he was only able to accumulate a small portion of the necessary energy. This left him with an important choice. If he wants to increase his energy storage rate, he needs to learn how to read his thoughts and control his energy vessels, which is only possible with a special elixir. He had 29,000 thalasses left, and he was wondering if this money would be enough to buy the elixir he needed. He went to a forested mountainous area called Jinan. There was a branch of the black market on the mountain, where wildlife ran wild and waterfalls made a noise. The young master arrived there to buy the elixir he needed. There were many different products on the shelves, and all of them were undoubtedly worthy of attention. The shopkeeper asked, "What kind of elixir are you looking for, pills or herbs?" Our hero replied that he didn't see much difference between the forms of elixir, but he was ready to listen to recommendations. The seller started to get wise. There's a saying that what you can't find on the black market, you can't find anywhere else in the world. If you don't find what you need here, maybe you should wait. The seller continued. You're very lucky, because we haven't had this elixir lately, but we just received a new shipment 2 days ago. Tell me quickly, what is this elixir? Our hero asked impatiently. The seller smiled and answered, It's a 1,000-year-old herb. The boy was worried because he knew that the millennial herb was not a simple herb, but a rare and powerful element. This herb provides a supply of energy for 10, 15 years. Nowadays, when even ordinary elixirs are rare, it's a great success to get one of these, the seller explained. The vendor named the price. It costs 40,000 thalas. Our hero would love to buy this herb, but he only has 25,000 thalasses, so he is 15,000 thalasses short. This leaves our hero with a difficult choice. Find a way to get the money he needs, or risk losing the opportunity to greatly improve his abilities. The seller added with concern, This may be the last opportunity to buy this elixir, because it's incredibly difficult to find these days. If you don't buy it now, someone else will. The man replied, I didn't bring enough money, so I'll come back next time. The seller asked, Why do you want to buy this elixir? I want to become stronger, the boy replied. The seller thought about it and asked, What will happen if you become stronger? The boy was silent for a moment, and then confessed, I recently realized how horribly I treated my parents. Now I am ready to do everything to make amends and show them respect. The salesman heard these words and was impressed by the boy's sincerity. He apologized for his questions, saying, That's the most absurd thing I've heard in years of doing business. The guy didn't understand why the salesperson reacted the way he did. The seller explained, Among all the customers from Tianhu who have tried to buy this elixir, I've never met anyone who behaves so dignified. Looking at his sly face, the boy understood. You're right, he said. When people are obsessed with becoming stronger, they often don't care about those around them. He added, And when I become stronger, I hope to correct past mistakes and show my respect for my mother. The salesman paused, taking a deep breath. The thing is, this all goes back so far. That things got so much worse it was too late, the guy continued, feeling the weight of his mistakes. He recalled the moment when he stood at his mother's gravestone, realizing that she would never come back. I regret that I missed the opportunity to become a good son, he admitted, his voice pained. Suddenly, the seller interrupted him. I will wait for you for 10 days. If you can raise the required amount, this elixir will be yours. I believe that every elixir has its rightful owner, he added, showing his sense of justice.
So prove to me that you are worthy of getting it, the seller challenged, setting a goal for the boy.
From that moment on, the boy had one important question that he kept asking himself. 3 of the 10 days had already passed, and time was running out. But he hadn't earned a single cent. He thought, if I spent all the money that the head of the syndicate, Yang, owed me now, maybe I could raise the 15,000 I need. But in that case, he would no longer be able to maintain the relationship with the syndicate leader at the level it is now, and the leader might think of him as an intrusive person trying to squeeze money. However, he had another plan for the head of the Yang clan. While deep in his thoughts, he barely noticed when Guang approached him, expressing his concern. I'm a little worried about you. The master noticed that Guang was thinking very carefully, almost like another young man he had once known. With a sly smile, Guang asked, Would you like to meet Lady Sun again by chance? I think... But it was a misunderstanding because our hero hadn't thought about Lady Sun all this time because he didn't care. In the first shot, we are transported to the Murima Alliance branch, located in the beautiful city of Quifu. The young master decided to disguise himself and spent a huge amount of money on a special mask. Since he was an imposter, no one was supposed to recognize him, and he spent so much money on disguise. One day, recalling that moment, Li Dan asked his friend why he borrowed 20,000 thalassa from the Yang syndicate. He suggested that the money might have been needed to catch a criminal, but as a result, his friend ended up being his hostage. Guan only tried to soften the situation by saying that the guy had lost the money and was a victim of a criminal. Li Dan realized that the real owner of this body was a complete idiot for getting himself involved in such shit. Guan, sweeping up, continued his story, which made the young master's hair stand on end. He said that if not for the intervention of the great warrior Guan, who was the leader of the Murim Alliance's Chiofu branch and with whom they often communicated, Li Dan would probably be dead by now. Our hero realized that the man who was the leader of the Murima Alliance branch decided to communicate with such a stupid guy. But why? He thought to himself. Guan also knew that the patriarch had given 15,000 thalassis to Lu Shu and 5,000 to the great warrior Gong as a token of his gratitude. This made it clear that the leader of the Murim branch had taken a bribe, which cast a corrupt shadow over his reputation. And in any case, this was the last blow to their family's finances, which finally upset young Mr. Guan. There was only one question left. Had Guo Dushu been caught? However, Guan hadn't heard anything about it and didn't know if he had been caught at all. This alerted our hero, who wanted to understand all these nuances. When he changed his clothes and approached the guards from Quifu, they asked who the man was looking for, but he had come to find the branch manager. The guards asked him where he was from and what area he was from. Looking at the guard with a stern gaze, radiating confidence, the young man replied that the Heavenly Blade sect was his patron. This made it clear to the guards that this man had a high status and should be allowed to open all doors. However, he had to wait a moment for the guard to ask his master if he could let the visitor in. Realizing this, Li Dan, although he was wearing a mask, knew that the Heavenly Blade sect was part of the 5 Central Plains powers, which are the most powerful factions in Tianhe. If not for him, these 5 factions might have fought for power in the Central Plains. He knew the internal circumstances of these 5 forces well, among which the Heavenly Blade sect was the best cover for his disguise. The reason was simple. Leader Wu Mafeng Zi of the Heavenly Blade sect had a complicated relationship with women. Because of this, he had more than 10 wives and dozens of children, and it was said that even the leader himself sometimes did not distinguish between his sons. The young representative of the sect was received with all honors, and the guards allowed him to enter. When he realized this, the young master realized that he and the guards were in complete disarray. Just because he said he belonged to the Heavenly Blade sect and was wearing expensive clothes, he was let in without any checks. No one even checked his identity, which could have been fake. If he was a hired gun who had come to kill the branch leader would already be dead, our hero thought. After a while, he was brought to the leader himself, who greeted the representative of the Heavenly Blade, noting his authority. The young man confirmed that he was indeed who he said he was. The head of the branch asked how to address him, as he had not yet introduced himself. The young gentleman replied that his name was Ma Yingchong, and that the current leader of the Heavenly Blade sect was his uncle. The branch head bowed to him, expressing his respect. He had long heard of their glorious name, and it was a great honor for him to meet the sect's representative in this place. Thinking to himself, the young gentleman realizes that he has called himself a big name. Although the real Ying Chong does exist, he leads a reclusive lifestyle, and so the world knows very little about him. The branch manager invited the so-called Master Ma In-chong to sit down at the table to make him comfortable. He poured him a cup of tea as if he were a valued guest, and the young gentleman told him that he had come to tell him some very important news. Their family had been pursuing someone for a long time, and after finding out who it was, it turned out that this person was holding someone hostage at this location. He heard that the branch head had intervened in the matter. The head's face visibly paled, realizing the purpose of this gentleman's visit. Recalling the events of his life, he realized that it was only Guo Dush, and this was a correct assumption. However, looking at this venerable man, the branch head did not understand why this person, in particular the great warrior Ma, was above them all. To which our master replied that this sin was directed against them, and all the warriors of his family were now pursuing him with all their might. The face of the head of the branch turned pale. He was no longer cheerful but thinking about something serious. This was obvious to our hero, who realized from Gongzong's expression that he and Guo Dushu had an important relationship. Continuing the dialogue, the branch head asked what great sin the man had committed against the Heavenly Blade sect. But it was an internal matter that he could not just reveal. However, there was still one important point that worried even the elders of his family. That was why he had come here in a hurry, without giving any warning. Realizing the absurdity of the situation, the man replied that although he did not fully understand everything, since the honored guest had come here, his family had gone ahead to search for the scoundrel. It is only a matter of time before they find him. As a representative of the Heavenly Blade sect, he has honestly appealed to the branch head to catch him before anyone else for his family. He wants to prove that his abilities are superior to the other heirs by outrunning them all. He asked the head of the branch, Gong, to show his kindness and turn him in. Moreover, our hero hints that if he doesn't want to get a promotion at the headquarters, this could be his opportunity, pressing on the most painful points. The head of the branch was thinking to himself, worried about his friend. But he couldn't just turn him in. The representative of the Heavenly Blade sect said that if he helped find Guo's soul, he would be sent directly to the headquarters. This will give him the opportunity to move up the career ladder. Our hero realizes that many branch leaders dream of getting into the Marima Alliance headquarters all their lives, and only the idea of the support of the Heavenly Blade sect makes them take radical steps. At first, the head of the branch did not believe that the young man was serious, but given his presence and importance, he decided not to reject the offer. The young man promised that if the branch head helped, the Heavenly Blade sect would send him to the Murim Alliance headquarters. He needs support, and he is looking for those he can trust at the headquarters. However, there is one important condition. The branch head must find out where this person is as soon as possible, because time is running out to take advantage of this opportunity. The branch manager, realizing the seriousness of the situation and the uniqueness of the chance, cannot afford to delay. The young gentleman looks at him with a piercing gaze, making it clear that this matter is extremely important. Soon, the branch manager pulled out a portrait and said that he wanted Mr. Jinan and was ready to hand him over. This scoundrel, who would betray even his own child for the sake of gambling, often visits gambling dens in the city where he can be found. If the young master can catch him, he will help the branch head to become the vice leader of the Murim Alliance headquarters. The good news tickled the branch manager's ears, giving him hope and a pleasant illusion of possibility. On emotion, he even promised that he would serve the Heavenly Blade representative with all his heart. However, the young master wanted to keep this dialogue a secret, as he could not allow the rest of his family to be the first to catch this rascal. Filled with hope, the branch manager promised to remain loyal and not reveal the nature of the situation. Because of the reward, the young gentleman inquired about the amount of the payment. He was offered 5,000 thalas, which seemed like a substantial sum. However, the young man said that 20,000 would be much better. The branch manager asked if he had heard correctly. 5,000, not 20,000 thalas, because he was interested. The representative of Heavenly Blade looked sternly ahead, escalating the tension in the situation. The branch leader even began to worry because of his expression. After realizing his mistake, he realized that 20,000 thalassa would be a better offer. The Heavenly Blade representative agreed, and said that in 3 days he would be able to pick up the money in Jinjiang. He planned to return to his family after he was done with that scoundrel. They agreed to meet in 3 days, when the case was completed, to discuss further plans. 3 days later in the mountains, at the same place where the meeting was scheduled, the branch leader climbs the mountains to collect the promised reward. The road was not easy for the old man, but his motivation gave him the strength to move forward. When he got to the appointed place, he saw the young master waiting patiently where they had agreed. In front of them lay the head of the rascal that this branch leader had turned in. The Heavenly Blade sect representative's intense gaze showed that the mission was complete, and he had kept his word. The branch leader, seeing his friend in such a state and what the man had done to him, began to fear for his life. After all, 5 days ago, this man, whose head was now lying on a stone, was considered invincible. And now he was lying here, completely defeated. The young gentleman asked why his colleague's look was so surprised, because this was a natural outcome that could be expected. At this point, the branch leader couldn't help but agree with him. However, it was not only about the murder, but also about the money. The branch leader handed the young master 20,000 thalas. He then congratulated him on completing an important task and mission for their clan and family. However, the serious expression on the young master's face was not one of celebration. His question sounded stern, not allowing the old man to relax. Did he need to transfer the money he had handed over at that moment? The branch manager assured him that the money had been transferred twice, as expected from a responsible branch manager. The Heavenly Blade representative was very pleased with this, and he promised him to prepare for a trip to the headquarters right away. The old man literally blossomed before his eyes at this news, realizing all the benefits and the great future that awaited him. Of course, he thanked the young master for his kindness. However, the old man had another problem. Before he died, the young man said a few words about the branch manager. The young man admitted that they had robbed the bullies Swordsman family together, and this phrase made the old man pale, his eyes filled with fear. He denied any involvement, claiming that it was ridiculous and untrue. Looking at his head, he hated this guy, whom he once considered a colleague, for speaking out before he died. The representative of Heavenly Blade assured him that there was no reason to panic, as he appreciated materialistic people who were capable of doing bold things. Looking at the old man intently, the young gentleman asked him an ambiguous question if he thought the same way. Without answering the question directly, the old man thanked his new friend for his understanding. However, from a distance, looking down from the mountain, our hero still didn't understand why the old man was behaving this way, and wondered why he was doing it. The branch manager realized that although his friend was talking before he died, he shouldn't have done so, but should have died quietly. Why did he have to give him away? If he continued to pretend he knew nothing, he might lose the trust of the Heavenly Blade representative. So he decided to tell everything, mentioning that guy named Bidwan, whom he considered a complete scoundrel. But this thought remained unfinished, and the young master asked the old man to continue. The old man replied that it was true. They only wanted to teach him good manners. Hearing this, our hero laughed, because all the answers to the questions had been received. The old man, in turn, did not fully understand why the representative of the Heavenly Blade laughed so hard, and it upset him. Nevertheless, the guy put his hand to his face, deciding to take off his mask. The old man hoped to receive some kind of reward for betraying his friend. But a young master from the clan they had robbed appeared in front of him and took off his mask. The old man was completely confused, not understanding how this could have happened, because Bilidan was standing in front of him. He was smiling and laughing at the situation, realizing that everything had happened the other way around, and not the way he thought he had committed a deadly sin. The old man was in such a state of shock that he could not say a word. But our hero continued, saying that if the old man had simply wanted to teach him good manners, it would have been enough to beat him. Why did he need to extort money from him? The branch representative realized that he had fallen for the trick and gave the money to the young man. He demanded his money back, accusing the young man of stealing. However, the young man emphasized that it was not his money, but the money the old man had stolen from his family. The branch leader became furious, his face flushed with anger, because he realized that the young man would not be able to resist his sword. He was going to punish this rascal who had deceived him, killed his friend, and taken his money. When he pulled out his sword, he rushed right at the young man. However, before he could swing, the old man saw a heavenly demon pass by like lightning. The young master stabbed the old man in the neck with his dagger and wiped the smile and sadness from the face of the rascal. At this point, the old man fell into an eternal sleep, and the blood scattered all over the mountain. The jokes were over. The young master was burning with hatred. No one would dare to insult him and his family anymore. The branch leader lay on the ground, head bowed forever, with only the sound of coughing coming from where he lay. He was coughing and choking for a long time. But Bilidan realized that it was not just for fun. This scoundrel deserved his suffering. Realizing that the Murama Alliance had not appointed him as the branch leader for such actions, but to protect the people of Jianggu, Bilidan knew that the old man had failed in his duties. He paid him back, depriving him not only of his position, but also of his life. Holding the money in his hands, Bilidan left the scene, knowing that he would need it again. He took his hard-earned money to the man who was selling medicine. Seeing such a large sum in front of him, the medicine seller was amazed. He could not even think that this guy could bring in money so quickly, and he was surprised that it became a reality. It was just incredible, and he couldn't imagine it happening so quickly. Soon, the elixir seller told the guy that he was waiting for money from him and would only be able to show him the goods after he transferred the entire amount. Understanding the situation, the guy agreed to wait, because 40,000 thalas is not a small amount. This money could provide an ordinary man with a comfortable life for the rest of his days, or even be left for his children, who could easily live on this amount. However, for a person from Jiangwu to spend this amount to increase his internal energy for 15 years seemed incomprehensible. The accumulated internal energy meant an increase of 15 years of time and effort. After a while, the seller brought the goods to the young master. He looked at the box carefully, wanting to make sure that the goods were real. When he opened the box, he was amazed to see the root. It was what he had been seeking and had paid such a large sum of money for. This beautiful ingredient was in excellent condition. As the elixir seller had said, the guy was very lucky to get it. Billy Don thanked the seller for his attentiveness and help. That was the end of their transaction. Everyone got what they wanted, and all that was left was to go about their business in silence. When Billy Dan left the store, the shopkeeper watched him closely and thought, "As I said, this elixir chose its owner, not the owner chose it." To make it work, Billy Dan decided to find a secluded place. He chose a beautiful cave that he found without spending much time and sat in the center. He looked for a long time at the root that was considered so rare and expensive. It was a 1,000-year-old herb that, if taken by an ordinary person, would give a long and painless life. And if a person from Jiangsu takes it, his or her internal energy will increase by at least 10-15 years. Usually, average martial artists can get up to 10 years of internal QI from a 1,000-year-old herb. But thanks to his art of heavenly martial circulation, Billy Dan can easily accumulate 15 years of internal energy. Thanks to his experience and the knowledge he had stored, he hoped that the 1,000-year herb would take care of him. After taking it, his body was filled with energy and his body temperature rose. Using the breathing technique, he tried to circulate all the power inside him. Even the steam came out of his body. This smoke purified him and filled him with new strength. It was as if his body was forming itself, and energy filled every vessel. For a long time, he practiced the breathing technique. Eventually, the root began to work, and the guy moved to a whole new level. After several days of active energy absorption and solitude, this time was not in vain for the young master. The light radiating from the cave illuminated everything around him, making it clear that the path of a celestial demon had begun. After a long cultivation, the young man felt different. But the moment he opened his eyes, his strength was on a completely different level, and his understanding of his body, which had improved, was redefined in an incredible way. The cave was illuminated by night fireflies, and our hero felt his inner energy growing. He needed to move away from this state to continue his journey. Soon the effects of the root began to weaken, and Billy Dan returned to his normal state. However, he was no longer the same guy he was before. His strength had increased by 15 years. Opening his eyes and seeing himself renewed, he looked at his hands. He felt an incredible strength that he had never felt before as he clenched his fist. Realizing that only the best was ahead, he knew why he had done it and that he had to keep going. He left the cave with a 15-year supply of internal energy. Billy Dan now has a total of 20 years of active cultivation. To test his skills and inner energy strength, he picks up his sword. Swinging the sword, he made an incredibly strong stroke that sliced through the air. His energy release became much stronger, and he felt much more confident on this earth. The flow of energy became more natural, and he could feel the difference between his previous and current state. His martial arts skills had grown tremendously, and now all that remained was to go forward no matter what. He would not only help his village and clan, but also conquer new heights. This result, the accumulated internal energy of 15 years, was simply amazing. The result lifted the Sky Demon's spirits, and he felt stronger than ever. All that remained was to see how he would move with his newfound strength. Sitting down in the cave, he pushed off the ground incredibly quickly and flew up. Now he could move like a bird, or like incredibly fast creatures. He landed on a branch of a tree and looked around. He could see the beautiful landscapes of Murim, endless forests, deep rivers, and everything he saw symbolized new opportunities. Billy Dan gained new strength through the reincarnation of a celestial demon. He hadn't felt this satisfaction in a long time. He hoped that this stage of the martial path would be different from the brutal and bloody path he had traveled in his previous life. Because of this, he believed that at the end of this journey, he would receive what he could not achieve in his previous life. When he returned to his village, he met his family, who had been waiting for him for a long time, and even began to worry. When Guang saw the young master, he asked why he hadn't returned for so long and if he was all right. His absence had already lasted for several days, and everyone had lost contact with him. Guan turned to him, saying that because he was young, They had lost several years of their lives because of his worries. The young master looked at Guan and noticed from his puffy eyes that he hadn't slept well, worrying about him. Passing by, Billy Dan asked the young man not to worry about him. Guan looked at the young master and did not understand why he was ignoring him. He could not stop worrying. Something had clearly happened to the young master during his long absence. Perhaps he had caught the rascal? However, the young master's words sounded stern and confident. I always pay my debts. This meant to Guan that everyone he needed was already dead. In any case, Guan needed to practice well the art of the mind that Billy Dan had taught him. He asked his friend to demonstrate this art right now. Guan started to turn his head away, explaining that he was not sure of himself because he was worried about someone. But Billy Dan insisted that Guan should run and show everything he had learned. In one of the rooms, Guan began to demonstrate his achievements. Steam began to come out of his head. The young master was looking at him, and it made him happy, because Guan said he hadn't trained. When he put his hand on Guan, he felt that the guy had moved to a new level. This was great news because he could see the enthusiasm in Guan's eyes. Although it looked like Guan was doing nothing, he had actually been working hard and diligently the whole time. There was nothing to do but praise him because he was really good. Tears of hope appeared in the eyes of the young man, who had just been sweeping the yard and could not even imagine that he would be lucky enough to learn from such a master. All the effort he had put into his training had paid off, and the praise from the young master was the best gift he could have received. It was the first praise he had ever received while training in martial arts. However, the young master believed that one should not attach importance to every little thing. One should move forward, raising the bar and reaching new heights. But still, Billy Dan remembered a moment from his previous life similar to this incident. His son was catching snowflakes while looking at the falling snow, talking confidently to his father. At that moment, the heavenly demon Tien. He sat in his chair and saw how happy his son Pek Pei was to see snow for the first time. It was very sentimental. Now, thinking about it, he realized that the people close to him were sentimental when they were young. But he himself had never been. Guan noticed that the young master had changed and was not like himself. He asked what had changed him in his youth. Looking at Guan, Billy Dan noticed that the young man looked content. He also noticed a change in his chi energy flow after he cleared his blood vessels, which affected the birth and control of energy. Perhaps this was due to the long communication with him. Billy Dan asked Guan what he thought had changed in him. Looking at his master, the boy hesitated for a long time, but eventually said that he had become calmer. This reassured Billy Dan, because everything was going according to plan. However, Guan decided to joke, and suggested that perhaps the young master had found a girlfriend. Billy Dan did not understand why he had such thoughts, but Guan wondered if he had actually guessed right, and perhaps the young master had slept with her. Guan believed that this could have happened. Hearing this nonsense, the young master stopped him, saying that it was time to move on to a new stage. He was going to teach him some new moves, and asked him to take the blade he had bought him. The spark in Guan's eyes shone with a new desire for knowledge. After a while, they found themselves at one of the training grounds. The young master, watching his student hold the blade, realized that he was trying hard. However, his movements were inaccurate, and he was very nervous. He spent a long time showing him how to hold his hands correctly, correcting the position of his shoulders. He taught him how to swing the sword so that everything would be accurate and precise. He explained how to look forward and still meet all the necessary requirements. After a while, the young master noticed that Guan was completely devoted to this craft. He tried his best to become stronger. By channeling his strength, the young man began to achieve some success, albeit insignificant. But this was only the beginning, and there was a long way ahead of them, which they had to go through together with the teacher. After a while, the young master began to cultivate his energy. He sat in his room absorbing energy to become stronger. His breathing techniques gave him strength and energy. However, someone burst into the room and exclaimed, "Master, something great has happened." Of course, the young master was not pleased to be interrupted, but Guan brought news that was hard to believe. The leader of the Murima Alliance had died. However, the young master did not lose his rhythm, did not reply, and continued his breathing techniques. Seeing that his words did not elicit a reaction, Guan repeated himself, "Jianghu will turn upside down again." He added that not only the people of Murim but everyone else was talking about this event. Yet the young master remained unmoved. Guan noticed a drop of indifference in his reaction, but he did not understand why. Finally, the young master replied, "Why should I cry?" But still, he thought he should at least be surprised. The young master simply said that he was already surprised, although he could not show it. Guan did not see the surprise on his face, but that did not mean it was not there. Billy Dan, looking at the mountains, reflected on how impossible it was to imagine that the leader of the Murima Alliance had died. He was surprised that life could leave a person like that, and how hard it was to believe. He really didn't know that death would come to a leader like that. Guang asked what this leader was like as a person. Bilidan only replied that who knows, he could only imagine, because he had not met him personally in his previous life. As he continued to think, he noted that such good people often die early. Perhaps the leader was disappointed by his death. The young gentleman asked why he thought so. Guan explained that if you were in the happiest position in the world, no one would want to die. He would consider it unfair if he had to die in the place of a leader. Bilidan, observing the boy's reaction, realized that he did not fully understand what he was talking about. After all, there was no happiness in a high position, and in his previous life everyone was afraid of him. They considered him an impregnable being who could not die and to whom nothing could happen. He was guarded by his closest people, and others could not even get close to him. But one day they disappeared and were not even near their father. When he returned, he saw only emptiness. His eyes were filled with sadness, because he was surrounded only by loyal subordinates, who were willing to sacrifice their lives to carry out his orders. But there was always an invisible wall between them. He never even had a serious conversation with his advisor, Galsorian. During all this time, his advisors could not even tell him the truth. He lived in solitude, and no one understood him fully. Even though he was the greatest and most important being in Murim, he was the loneliest of all the lonely people in this place. Watching his reaction, Guang offered the young master some alcohol. What does he mean right now? Thought Guang. But there is an occasion. Elder Jiang died, and they should express their condolences on this occasion. It was interesting for the former leader of Murim to watch all this from the outside, with a completely different face. Now he had only his loyal friend left. The young master was not averse to celebrating, especially since his friend had become a Jiangsu man and asked him to buy him something to drink. Guan thought that if he said so, he had no choice but to buy something festive this time. He offered to have a beer on him, which sounded pretty funny. The story gets even more interesting from there. We are transported to the Murim Alliance headquarters, where a very important issue is being considered. One of those present was looking away, as the situation was not looking good. This man could not believe that the leader of the Alliance had died. It seemed that this person was impressive, like a heavenly demon who had gone into oblivion in an unknown situation. The phrase that distracted this man from his thoughts was, "We need to choose the next leader. We can't put it off any longer." Although these words upset the man, he realized that it was true. With a glass of alcohol in his hand, the leader of the Bright Moon Group, TSO Tai Long, said that they could not expect someone who had sworn with the leader to nominate a candidate to take his place. He did not even discuss it with the son and heir to the heavenly demon. Furthermore, he did this after defeating all 10 key organizations in the Murim Alliance, including Yarka Luna, the Iron Horse Group, the Law Enforcement Hall, and the Administrative Hall. Even their Council of Elders was defeated. This man had been preparing for this for a long time. The man had no doubt that the leader of the Murim Alliance had been killed by the hands of someone present. TSO Tai Long, drinking strong alcohol, tried to understand how the person who had to restore the normal operation of the Alliance felt. They could postpone the decision, but it would do no good. His words felt like a knife in the back, because there was no rush. The leader of the Alliance had recently died. More time was needed to think things through. But TSO Tai Long did not want to wait. He was annoyed with these indecisive fools. He put the empty glass on the table and banged it loudly. He warned them that if they continued to delay, the vote would be held without this counselor's participation. These words not only alerted the counselor, but also made it clear who the traitor among them was. When TSO Tai Long left the room, the counselor breathed a sigh of relief, sensing the tension in the team. Now that 2 of the 3 main groups had made a decision, there was nothing he could do, not even interfere with them. Looking at the mountains, he realized that if things continued like this, nothing good would happen. He was very hurt that the head of the Alliance, Murim, had passed away so suddenly. He shouldn't have done it. But death is a thing that does not choose. Next we will see a completely new development of events. The sound of glasses being poured diluted the boring day. Picking up a glass of alcohol, the young gentleman decided to drink, reflecting on the current situation. Before he could finish his drink, the old man caught his attention. He suggested that although he did not know the leader of the Murim Alliance personally, the name Tian Hizikin deserved respect as a martial artist. Perhaps this simple guy sitting in a bar is unaware of the fight between Tian He and the martial demon. At the next table, the men were talking about the aftermath of that fight, and everyone had a different version, but most of them were just gossip. The man at the next table was trying to convince his younger friends that he didn't just know about the incident. He said that he was personally present during the fight and knew everything in detail. Having overheard this dialogue, the young gentleman realized that the old man was lying. In fact, No one survived the battle that day. Not only the war demon, but all of his subordinates were killed. However, the old man easily lied about this story, describing the war demon as a terrible person. According to him, the demon was 3 meters tall and its fist was the size of an adult's head. He was created for battle. Listening to these stories, the celestial demon was both laughing and sad, because it was all fiction. Recalling the war demon, he remembered that he was very small, only 1.5 meters tall, and very thin. His appearance did not correspond to any idea of a fighter. Remembering this story, the guy wanted to drink his glass of alcohol and picked it up. As he raised it to his lips, he remembered that fight and asked himself if it was really a great and significant fight. It was raining heavily that day, and blood filled the battlefield, coloring the ground. At the moment he had the opportunity, he barely managed to plunge his sword into the heart of the war demon. But at the next table, the conversations did not stop. One of the men was dissatisfied, saying that even the god of the sword would not have helped. The tanned man asked what he was dissatisfied with, and why he was expressing such dissatisfaction. One of the men said that there were rumors that Tianhe Jin had illegally amassed a huge fortune and made money from secret deals. This interested our hero, because such accusations were unfair. He had done nothing of the sort, and had always tried to live honestly. There was an assumption that with such strong martial arts skills, he could make money this way, and these rumors spread across the continent. Ordinary men sitting in the bar heard this, and didn't believe it right away, given his position as the leader of the alliance. Why would he need money? Moreover, Tianhe had the strongest martial arts skills of any of the leaders. They assumed that he had died before he could spend all that money. The people in the bar were curious about how much money the Muruma leader could have embezzled. Perhaps tens of millions, or even 100 million. Listening to this, the boy felt disgusted with these words, considering them to be complete nonsense. Gossip bred new gossip, and the accusations that Murim's head was accumulating money illegally went beyond the pale. But people like to talk about who made what money and how. They like to discuss such things. After listening to the various rumors, our hero decided to leave the bar. He felt heavy at heart, realizing all the gossip he had heard. He realized that he had sacrificed his entire past life for this beautiful place, and for these wonderful people in Jiangsu. Yet these people were as ungrateful as anyone else. They could not even imagine or think about how much the Murim head liked Jianggu. When he returned to his village, he saw his new disciple actively training. The martial arts student was no longer so helpless. He enthusiastically did everything his teacher told him. He grew right before our eyes, and the guy who had recently been an ordinary servant was getting the highest quality training that Jiangsu can offer, because there is no such training anywhere else. And the fact that he easily mastered the extraordinary martial art called the 7 Movements of the South Sea was incredible, because its master was the head of Murim himself. Realizing this, the young master made it clear to his student that he had mastered a lot. He had been practicing diligently all along, and when the young master approached him recently, he saw his results. Although Guang was deeply absorbed in his training, he did not notice Bilidan's arrival. Bilidan made a remark to him that even if it is the same martial art, there is always a significant difference depending on how it is used. The most important thing in martial arts is always people. Guang was impressed by these words and remembered them forever. From that moment on, Bilidan asked the boy to drop everything and train with him. He bought another sword for him and gave it to him. This gift was very valuable to the boy, and he did not know how to thank the master. However, it was enough just to try to pull the sword out of its scabbard. When he pulled it out, Guang felt the blade of a beautiful legendary sword. Looking at Guang's face, it was clear that he understood the significance of such a gift. The sensations from this sword were completely different, perhaps because it was forged especially for him. Even if he held another valuable blade in his hands, he would not feel the same way. However, the young master noticed that the boy had never held a valuable sword in his hands before, so he said so. Guan was saddened by these words, and as he looked at his master, his soul was overwhelmed with sadness. Bilidan even asked what had happened to his student's face. Guang only asked if his master was okay, but what did he mean? He even turned away and curled up inside himself, starting to say that there are rumors that people do things before they die that they have never done in life. This scared Guang very much, as he thought that perhaps the master was dying of an incurable disease. When he heard this, the young master decided to joke, saying that if that happened, he would leave a will so that they would be buried together, and next to each other. Guan even walked away from these words, imagining it in his mind. And yet, the young master looked at him and realized that not many people could look him in the eye when they spoke. Since everyone was afraid of him and worshipped him, the young master wondered if this was part of his happiness, and if he felt good. At the time, he thought that the power that allowed him to show himself was his real pride, and he valued it. But when he found himself in a completely different place, in different circumstances, with his memory intact, he realized that he now felt completely different. How nice it would be to communicate with Guan informally. Guan, looking at the young master, promised that he would become a great warrior with this blade, which was a very valuable gift for him. That was all Billy Dan wanted to hear, and it was time for him to leave. He instructs his apprentice and tells him to work hard and train hard all this time. He adds, "Subscribe to our channel, because it's going to get even more interesting. Thank you, my friend." We move to the headquarters where Billy Dan has arrived to meet with the general. The general was not expecting our hero to arrive and asked if he was doing well. The young gentleman replied that everything was fine and hoped that Songhwa's father was also doing well. The general replied that he had just returned from a meeting with his father. Since the breakup of his engagement to Songhwa Lee, their relationship had become quite awkward. The girl's father knew that there was a time when Billy Dan was at a loss and not at his best. He didn't think it was a bad thing for a young man, because everything passes with time. He believed that the early wanderings were quickly forgotten, and better times would come. The young master felt grateful to this man for thinking well of him, and perhaps it had more to do with his friendship with Billy Dan's father. He really envied their friendship, because despite all the difficulties, they stayed together. Thinking back to his previous life, he realized that he did not have this, and there was always a big gap between him and his associates. Songhwa's father said with difficulty that if he was worried about what Lin had said about breaking off the engagement, he shouldn't worry, because girls can be moody sometimes. However, Billy Dan decided not to get Lin's father's hopes up, because he probably knew that was not the case. He was sure that Lena was right. At the very least, marriage should be granted only to those who are directly involved. If a father decided to marry off his daughter without her consent, it would lead to nothing, and the conversation would not continue. As he was leaving, the girl's father said that even in this case, he would not give up on her. At the moment this man left, Guang was standing outside the door, waiting for the room to be free. He had come to visit his master, but he did not expect such serious conversations to take place here. Billy Dan breathed a sigh of relief when the man left his room. He realized that he should have said that he would behave in the future, and wondered why the man had been so insistent on this issue. Sitting down and smiling, Billy Dan asked his student if he really wanted him to get back on track with Lady Song. But why shouldn't he want to? It's natural for such a relationship. However, many questions prevented Guan from formulating his thoughts. He wondered what his master meant, because he had repeatedly told him that if a girl is beautiful, that is enough. She has a good family, is smart, talented, and has a great character. What else is needed? Guan decided to joke, suggesting that the young gentleman must have saved Jianggu in his past life. But that was not the case. The young master emphasized that their relationship lacked the most important thing, love. But in fact, he had indeed saved Jiang in his past life. After these words, Guang's expression changed. The master emphasized again that they did not love each other, and this was the honest truth. Therefore, he believed that they should not get married just because their parents wanted to strengthen the relationship. Looking at Guan's face, the master asked him if he was right in his reasoning. If he was right, why was the boy looking at him so closely? Guan merely remarked that Billy Dan had grown up in his eyes and had really matured, looking like a grown man. The truth is that there were many thoughts in the young master's mind. But why did Guan come here? He came because the patriarch called the young master to him. Soon the boy hurried to his father for a conversation. His question was quite simple. Why did his father call him? Standing next to his wife, the father said that he had something to tell him because Patriarch's son had been here recently. Patriarch's son had just exchanged greetings with him and said that it was impossible to break off the engagement. But my father laughed because it wasn't true. What did his father want to say to the boy? He decided to tell him a story. The father told him that the Shunduan Chamber of Commerce, the largest trade organization in Shunduan, wanted to bring together different families in the region to form a union. Hearing this news, the young man was amazed and continued to listen to his father. The fact is that he said that not only the Shunduan Chamber of Commerce, but also other chambers are going to unite before appointing a new leader of the alliance. This shocked the young master's soul, because in his past life he had strictly forbidden Murim factions to unite. He sought to prevent the chaos that could arise when power and association merge. Who would have thought that Murim would begin to change once he was gone? As soon as the news of his death spreads across these lands, everything will change faster than he could have imagined. The Shunduan Chamber of Commerce said it wanted to support Patriarch Song, and he was considering becoming the head of the Shunduan Union. The young master realized that since his father was a friend of the Patriarch, he was probably going to support him. But given their friendship, his father would support any decision he made. Realizing this, He thought that he should look into the situation carefully, because the Shunduan Chamber of Commerce had put forward this proposal. Merchants only act when there is some benefit, and if they are teaming up with different factions, it is not just for fun. The young gentleman thanked his father for the news. After hearing the gratitude from his son, the father believed that this information was important, and he needed to know it anyway. Having understood everything, the boy decided that he had to go, because he had a lot to do, and he had already received all the necessary information. Leaving his parents' yard, he felt that his feelings for his parents had become much deeper. At first he thought that he would not be able to consciously accept them as his real parents, but now his feelings naturally take over his consciousness. He feels as if these people have really become his real parents, even if he shows them the respect that he could not show his late mother. Perhaps she would have deserved such respect the most. Walking through the yard, the boy suddenly meets a girl, a very familiar girl, Songhua Lin. She came uninvited, which surprised the young master. When he asked why he was surprised, the boy replied that he had not expected her visit. She stopped him, saying that she honestly wouldn't have come here if she didn't need to ask him for a favor. The man asked what kind of favor she meant. She asked the patriarch to persuade his father to reject the offer of the Shunduan Chamber of Commerce. But why did the girl need this particular request? The fact is that if he changes his mind when his father asks for it, it will make a big difference. She can't even imagine it, but the patriarch's words will definitely influence her father's decision. The young master understood what she was talking about, and that she was right. But why is she addressing this issue to her father? She thinks that the leadership of the Shunduan Union is not suitable for him. In the boyfriend's opinion, she may be underestimating her father. But she believes that this is better than the problems that may arise from overestimating his abilities. Realizing this, Billy Dan thought that she was reasoning correctly, and she needed to act more cautiously given these changes. Moreover, if she overestimates herself, there is a high probability that she will be swept away. Since the previous leader of the alliance did not stabilize the situation in Murim, he does not think it is bad to be the head of the alliance. In such a peaceful time, the power of the Song family could also increase significantly. But this is exactly what Songhua Lin is worried about, and she knows what she is talking about. When the young gentleman asked her what she meant, the girl replied that the former leader of the alliance had ruled Murim for a long time thanks to his great martial art. And it's true that he defended peace in Jiangsu. But on the other hand, there are things that develop in the dark so that no one knows about them. What are these things that develop in the dark? The boy asked. The girl's surprising answer shocked him. It was the suppression of desires. Since Murim are people with the instinct to defeat their opponents in advance, they are by nature cruel and barbaric. They are wolves and tigers, not rabbits or deer. However, thanks to the power of the former leader, everyone hid their true nature. If they had dared to reveal it, they would have been immediately killed. If they did not want to die, how can we explain it? They all waited vigilantly for him to die, and for a long time they failed, but now the cage was open. All this time they wanted only one thing, the death of the head of Murim. He kept them in the cage and did not allow them to show their true nature. The next day, the young master went on a mission he had invented for himself. He was interested in the words that the sweet-tooth Hualin told him, and he had a lot to understand. For the first time in a long time, he had a dream in which he went back in time and participated in a meeting between the Alliance and Murim. The meeting was attended by representatives of all the major factions and sects, and the head of the Alliance, Murim, sat in the center to hold an important meeting. He looked around with a serious look to keep the situation under control. Everyone in that room at that meeting had anxious expressions on their faces. They were eagerly awaiting the death of the head of the Alliance, salivating at the thought. This thought was so ingrained in his mind that he could not relax for a second. From this dream, he realized that he had not really died an ordinary death. He had been murdered. The next day, in the middle of the lake at a resting place, he met Lin again. The girl asked if he had spoken to the head of the family, to which our hero replied that he had not. She realized that if they lost too much time, there would be no turning back. However, nothing could be fixed. She apologized for bothering him. She simply believed that if he made the wrong move, things could change for the worse. But she was very interested in what the young master meant by that. He thought that if his father was against it, maybe he could convince the head of the Sum family. However, if she was not sure that he would not have any doubts about it. To this the girl could not answer him. The fact is that the young master is worried that their friendship might be shaken. Will Songhua Lin take responsibility, and does she want to? Of course she doesn't want to. She looked down and thought that she did not want to spoil their relationship. If she wants to save their relationship, she needs to find a good reason to back out so that their parents will back down as well. That sounds great, but how does one find such a reason? Looking at Hualin with a keen eye, Our hero asked her if she had tried to find that reason. He asked if she had made an effort to find a reason to refuse, or if she wanted everything to be her will without any effort. This rhetorical question made the girl think about her place. Of course, she realizes that she is fully responsible for her actions and does not want to avoid it. Our hero realized that he could do business with her and continued the story. Their CEO, Zhang, informed him of a case worth considering. A few years ago, the Shandong Chamber of Commerce, affiliated with the Sum family, was trying to make a big deal. But at some point, all talk about it stopped. Lady Sum didn't understand what kind of deal it was, and neither did the boyfriend. He assumed that it might be related to certain factors, but first they needed to find out why the deal was cancelled. Recalling that moment, the girl said that her father would soon give an answer, and they had very little time left to investigate on their own. If they ordered information from confidential information providers, they could find out everything within a day. Sung was amazed because she had never heard of such confidential information providers. However, the guy had contacted them many times and realized that it didn't require a lot of money. Looking at Hualin, he made it clear that the choice was hers, and it was up to her to decide whether to pursue this business or leave it at that. Night fell, and they went to the black market. Walking through the streets, there was no one on their way. Only the light of street lamps illuminated their path. The guy was amazed that Hualing was able to find as many as 2,000 thalasses in just 4 hours. He noticed that she was very nervous and realized that she had never used the services of a confidential information provider before. He had also heard about this informant from Galasaryan and was sure that it was natural for the girl to be so nervous. Soon they found themselves at the Heavenly Networking Union in the Chiubu branch. The girl explained her nervousness by saying that it was her first time. The young master took her condition calmly and with understanding. He warned her that even if it was, she shouldn't show it, because the amount could double. Hearing this, the girl realized that the stakes were high and decided to keep her cool. She even promised the young master that she would not show her excitement. Accepting her promise, he decided to continue moving forward. Soon they entered the building. Our hero was the first to enter, open the door, and head to the place he knew and had heard about. He knew for sure that this place was here. The man who met them asked what their purpose was. They came to buy information, as our hero explained. The man, hearing this, looked them over carefully. Hualing kept a stern face as this man looked at her. They looked serious, as if they were carrying important intentions. Appearance and demeanor mattered because it could determine their solvency and goals. The man was interested in what they wanted to know. They wanted to know about the Shandong Chamber of Commerce, and the information peddler quoted a price of 1,500 taels, although it was originally 200 taels, but had recently increased. This price increase hinted that something might have happened to affect its value. Looking at each other, they realized that they had to act. The girl put a bag of gold on the table with the money in it. After a while, the merchant counted the money and decided to tell them everything. A few months ago, the Shunduan Chamber of Commerce merged with the Yang clan and made inroads into Hebei. It was amazing news because the Yang clan had been active before, and it happened before we dealt with them. At that time, the leader of the Yang clan was Yang Ji-je, the guy who was destroyed by our hero. How did they manage to break through if there is a chamber of commerce that doesn't allow this to happen? The young master wondered what made them go ahead, believing in the power of the Yang clan. They had apparently come into conflict with the Shi family, which supported the Hebei Chamber of Commerce, and a major religious struggle had broken out that could have escalated into a larger conflict. However, with the death of the leader of the Yang clan, the Shunduan Chamber of Commerce suffered losses. This happened because Zheng Yu, the new leader, severed ties with the chamber. Analyzing the situation, Bilidan understands what the Hebei Chamber of Commerce and the Shi family are doing now. It is said that they are preparing to take revenge on the Shunduan Chamber of Commerce, and there are even rumors that the Hebei Chamber of Commerce is using this opportunity to expand its influence in Shunduan. All of the information received was about the Shunduan Chamber of Commerce, and the guests thanked the merchant for it. As they left the stall, they realized that if this information had not been useful to them, they might have said that 1,500 thalassa was an exorbitant price. But what they had just heard was worth much more than that. Hua Ling started talking about how the Heavenly Union was a hoax. They were trying to use their family to avoid pressure from the Hebei Chamber of Commerce and the Shi family. It was exactly as she had realized. The girl was overcome with a sense of fear, because this was beyond all accepted economic laws. The boyfriend couldn't help but agree with her because it was really scary. Given this information, they needed to do something completely different. Lin decided to move forward and tell her father immediately. As she was walking away from the young master, she suddenly stopped and turned around. From the bottom of her heart, she thanked him for his help. However, our hero replied that there was no need to thank her, because she had bought this information with her own money. The girl did not recognize Bilidan as the man he used to be. After that, she hurried to her father to tell him this information. They went their separate ways. But it gave Lin a lot to think about, and helped her avoid many of their parents' mistakes. Returning to the village, our hero met with Guan. He had recently learned that Patriarch Song had come to visit with his daughter, Lady Song. It was true, and there was no arguing with it because it was true. Patriarch Song, having heard about the incident, came with his daughter to express his gratitude at the meeting. Thanks to our hero, they learned the truth, and that's why he came. When they met face to face, the young master insisted that Miss Lin was the one who had found out everything, and he was just a chaperone. Mrs. Lin stood behind her father and listened to the young man's words in awe. However, the patriarch could not believe it and knew that it was not quite like that. But he was still grateful because without him, their family would have been in big trouble. He shook his hand, which was a sign of great respect on his part. Despite the roughness of his hands, they were warm. The patriarch had only good intentions and could not find words to express his gratitude. Guan reflected on the incident and thought about how his master had gotten a few points from Lady Song afterwards, perhaps by inviting her out for a drink, Guan imagined. However, the opposite happened. They immediately parted ways. In Guang's opinion, they should have had a drink together at least once to settle things, but the young master did not do it for such purposes. In any case, today they would have a sparring match, in which Guan would participate with his master. Guan thought that he was not ready yet, but decided not to give in to this mood, and even assumed that something had upset the master lately. If so, he would simply suggest that he spend time with Lady Song. But the young master shut him up, calling his words nonsense, and ordered him to prepare for the sparring match because it was no joke. Hearing about sparring with blades, Guang was initially frightened, but the master explained that they had recently sparred with wooden swords. In Guang's opinion, this was a logical and correct approach, although it was a good way to learn to fight. If he was never going to draw his sword, he should fight with wooden blades for the rest of his life. If he wants to become a strong warrior, he must overcome his fear. Despite his fear, Guan decided to overcome it. He went to get the sword and soon returned. After a while, they stood on the training ground holding their swords. Guang pointed his sword toward the master, but his hands were trembling. The heavenly demon saw his worry and realized that it needed to be fixed. However, now that they were actually doing it, he was becoming afraid to sword fight. He understood perfectly well that the fear of pulling out a blade and pointing it at another person is a natural fear. At this point, the master draws his sword. But there is one but. You should not give up just because you are scared. After these words, Guang sees the master skillfully point his sword in his direction. He did not know how Guang would take it, but every word contained his understanding of martial arts. Guang was afraid that he might accidentally hurt the master, but the master understood what he was doing and was not at all afraid of being hurt. The master assured him that he could attack as much as he wanted and imagined him to be a real enemy. Believing in himself, Guan pointed his blade in the direction of his master. Our hero was not going to dodge and was just waiting for his student to attack. At the moment when Guan decisively attacked the young master, he seemed to have transcended his fear, and his sword flew straight at Bilidan. This was already a good result, and the master easily deflected his blow. However, it was a shock for Guan, and he almost dropped his sword. The master told him to open his eyes wider and make his attacks as precisely as possible. Guan heard his instructions, and he prepared for another attack. Swinging his sword, the boy wanted to strike hard, but as befits a master, he deflected all his blows. However, this time the boy did not retreat. He continued to attack, despite the skill of the enemy. Attack after attack became better than the previous ones, and it seemed that the boy was growing before our eyes. However, each counterattack of the master threw him aside. Their training lasted for a very long time, and the student received many whippings. The young master reminded him that he had to open his eyes. If he was afraid of the sword, he would die. Guan had to focus on his blade, and with each word he was following these rules more and more. During one of the attacks, Guan was already much better at parrying the master's blows. However, despite this, his skills were not enough. The master decided to show him an easy move, and by repelling his attack, demonstrate his skills. The boy, thrown aside, realized that he was losing control when he closed his eyes. At that moment, the master, with anger in his eyes and a shining blade, approached him. Guan felt as if death had approached him and flashed past his eyes. He even mentally said goodbye to his life, clenched his teeth and closed his eyes, expecting a blow from the young master. But the master stopped right in front of his nose, and when he opened his eyes, Guang saw the blade in front of him. By doing so, he wanted to show that a real fight ends in death. If Guan realized this, he would be able to move forward without fear. Guan lay on the ground, and the master ended the fight. After the encounter with death, his body shook for a long time, as did his arms and legs. The master turned to his student, Guan too. He said that if Guan was too scared, he could stop training so as not to overwork himself. Guan thought about it for a while and asked himself. When he looked at his beautiful sword that had been given to him, he realized that this sword was not for being afraid. He promised his master that he would go all the way and study to the end. He really enjoys learning martial arts, even though he is afraid, but happy at the same time. He's ready to fight, no matter what it takes, and go all the way. If he decides to do so, he must not give up under any circumstances. Guan promises the young master that he will never give up or abandon his efforts, although everything depends on his ability to work. Soon it started to rain at the place where they were practicing. Guan noticed that it was a beautiful spring rain. It seemed that spring was coming, and this gave the young master hope. "Let spring come!" he shouted, remembering how in his past life he had felt nothing when he saw snow. But now the spring rain made him delighted. He was looking forward to this time, and was intrigued by what might happen in the future. A few days later, Guan burst into the young master's room. As usual, without knocking, he ran in and shouted across the room. He said that an announcement had been made about the new leader of the alliance. The young master, realizing this, knew that this day would come and was interested to know who it was. His boss replied that the new leader was a master of the Heavenly Blade sect. This news was not just shocking, it called the entire Murim alliance into question. The leader of the Heavenly Blade sect, Ma Fengji, is the same person who used to pretend to be Ma Yinchun. Not only does he have a difficult relationship with women, he is not at peace with himself. Greedy not only for money, but also for power, sinister and cruel. When he was a part of the Murim alliance, no one expected Ma Fengji to become the new leader. When our hero heard this, he asked his student in surprise if he was right. But Guan had checked this information several times, and people everywhere were talking about this rascal. Galsar Yang would never have chosen Ma Fengji as the head of the Murim alliance. There is no way that he could not have prevented the election of this man. If this is true, then something has gone wrong, and he could feel it with his whole body. Something very serious has happened, and it is a great danger to the entire Murim world. The situation was not going well, and our hero moved to Wuhan to find out. In one establishment where he was a guest, he was drinking tea and looking out of the window at the people walking and bustling around. One thought kept running through his mind. Why was this man chosen to be the head of the Murim alliance? This thought haunted him, prevented him from sleeping and eating, and constantly disturbed him. People everywhere were talking about the leader of the alliance, Mr. Ma, who had killed one of the leaders of the Dark Path Syndicate, the 30th head of the Dark Shadow Palace, and attributed it to him. This talk was utter nonsense, ruining his reputation, which he had worked for all his life. People were saying that all the murders were committed by Tianhui Jin, and they didn't understand why they needed an alliance leader at all if they had a syndicate leader. It wasn't the first time he had heard such rumors since he arrived in Wuhan. Fengzi rumors were spreading everywhere, and there were also many gossips, embellished with lies, about how he had had great difficulty killing the leader of the Dark Shadow Palace because of Ma Fengzi's late arrival, who only showed up after he had dealt with the remnants. All this alarmed the young master. Perhaps they had been waiting for him to die all along. He forced himself to help the Murima alliance, even though he was against the unorthodox way. However, he avoided battles to reduce the damage done to his own sect. After the young master revealed his true intentions, everyone who was part of the Heavenly Blade sect lived without being able to raise their heads in their presence. But now rumors are spreading that they are being praised for something they didn't even do. Someone is deliberately spreading lies, giving people false rumors. In this way, they hope to increase the influence of the faction. When he was the head of Murim, one of his advisors told him that even if he was the strongest man in the world, he would not be able to rule the Central Plains. The strongest in the world are those who are best at fighting. The one who dominates Jiangsu is the real authority. He understood this when he was the head of the Murim alliance, and now that he is here, there is a reason he was reincarnated. What Galsar Young said back then was the real truth. Moreover, now he is not even the most powerful man in the world. All he has to do is watch what happens at the top. One night, the young master headed through the forest along a path he knew well in the past. As he walked along it, he noticed a very familiar place. There was a tavern in the forest on the side of the road, where he sometimes drank alcohol during night raids when he was the leader of the alliance. Had he come here without realizing it? He did not personally enjoy drinking, but he was accompanied by his son, Pek Pi, who often refused the alcohol that was offered to him. Even when he was told that he could only have one drink, he never did. He was a man who never compromised his principles, especially with regard to his escort duties. This showed how loyal and faithful he was. His reputation was forever cemented, and with the heavenly demon as his escort, he was always comfortable, even if he was having a drink. Passing by this legendary place, the guy decided to stop in for a moment. When he got inside, he was greeted by a man. Upon closer inspection, the young master realized that it was the same man he had just mentioned. It was Peck himself, and it seemed that the owner of this establishment had changed. Just in case, the young man's surprised face gave away his thoughts, and he asked who the owner of this place was. Peck confirmed that he was the owner and had recently taken over, and they had opened today. Billy Don was amazed to be the first customer that day. Peck didn't look the same as he used to. What had happened to him to start running this tavern? He invited the young owner to sit down and explain how it happened in his life. He sat down at his favorite table by the window, where he always liked to sit. Peck asked why he chose this particular place, as it was also his favorite place. "Is there a special reason why you particularly like this place?" The boy simply replied that he liked it here no matter what. Peck smiled and poured a glass of alcohol for the young man. As he raised the glass to his lips, he wondered if he had always sat here. When he was the chairman of the Murim Alliance, he and his bodyguard, who was then Peck often sat in this spot. Peck never left his side for a minute and was always on the lookout. The owner wanted to tell his old acquaintance that he was actually Tianhui Jin. If he had said it, Peck would have followed him for sure. However, Tianhui Jin had been dead for a long time. As in his past life, so in this one, he is now only Billy Don. Realizing this, he decided not to say anything, realizing the curiosity of the situation. Soon someone else entered the establishment. "This is a nice place," the man said, and the boy immediately recognized his voice. It was his advisor, and the boy was surprised to see such people in this place. Galsar Young personally visited the place of his good friend Peck. The owner of the establishment greeted Mr. Advisor and praised him for buying such a store. Peck acknowledged that he was indeed lucky, as the previous owner had been forced to close the store and return home. As the counselor was passing by one of the tables, he noticed the young man. He noticed someone in the place and suggested that Peck go outside for some fresh air. At that moment, the counselor went out with the owner of the establishment. Our hero just watched them through the window. The counselor asked if this guy had come here before, but he had never been seen here, although the counselor had told him several times about the great atmosphere here and even offered to go together when there was time. He became passionate about the topic, and the counselor began to suspect something. Finishing the glass of alcohol that Peck poured him, the counselor was thinking. He regretted his past life. He would have liked to spend time with Galsar Young and Peck. In a casual setting, they could not even imagine that the head of the Murim Alliance was sitting in this establishment, but in a different body. The advisor came to ask Peck whether he intended to remain in the Murim Alliance. Peck, however, apologized, explaining that he saw no point in defending the new leader. The advisor agreed and expressed his agreement. Peck acknowledged that the counselor had done everything he could, because the Bright Moon and Iron Horse groups had betrayed them, and there was nothing they could do to stop them. The young master heard them talking and his hair stood on end. The Bright Moon and Iron Horse groups had betrayed them. He thought that if Peck had not said this, he would have thought it was nonsense. Who would have thought that these two would betray their alliance? The boys talked further, discussing that this was not, strictly speaking, a betrayal, because they had remained loyal to the leader of the alliance as long as he was alive. However, the young master realized that it was a clear betrayal, that they had betrayed his dear subordinates after his death. They should have helped Galsar Young. They should not have appointed a scoundrel like Ma Fengzi as leader. Peck wondered what the master counselor was going to do next. Understanding the situation, the counselor was sure that these people wanted him to disappear, but he planned to hang on a little longer. Peck doubted whether that would be the right thing to do. The advisor explained that he was being closely monitored, so they would not be able to do anything to him, most likely transferring him to some small organization. However, he planned to go all the way, and these words excited Peck. Perhaps it was presumptuous of him, but why doesn't the advisor leave the Murin Alliance? The advisor replied that this was his true home, that he would stay until the end, because this was his starting and ending point. The guy, realizing the gravity of the situation, was shocked, realizing how far things had gone and how bad it had become after his death in his previous life. After a while, the guy returned to his village. He had no choice but to return, as he was unable to take any action. Nothing would have changed if he had gone to them right away, and he said that he was the reborn head of the Murim Alliance. As soon as the young master entered, he was greeted by a disciple who was happy to see him. Noticing the dim look on his master's face, the disciple assumed that things had not gone well, as he looked disappointed. From the master's point of view, it was really quite bad. The iguana understood from his master's expression that, although the situation was difficult, it was possible to find a way forward. He noticed that finally the master began to behave like a normal person. But what did this mean? The student replied that all this time the teacher had been acting as if he could achieve everything he set out to do, even though he hadn't said so. It really looked like that. From these words, Bilidan concluded that he now understands how to calm or encourage this young man. As a result, he tells the young man to train hard so that he doesn't have to worry about such things. With a sweet smile, the boy looked at his master. He offered him a rest as he was tired, and promised to cook his favorite dish for dinner. The master thanked him and said that everything would be fine. As he walked away, he recalls the moment when he decided not to interfere in the affairs of the Murim alliance. But Gal Saryang, Pikipe, Ma Fengzi, and even his own death, all of this was extremely hard. But nothing would have changed if he had intervened then and taken care of them. Now he needs to focus on the development of the bullies Swordsman family. Since Jiangsu is in turmoil, he has to develop the bullies Swordsman family to be able to protect himself. After all, a big storm is coming soon. The next day, the young master announced that he wanted to have his own swordsman squad. At first, his parents didn't take it seriously, but they began to discuss it. His father sternly asked him if he understood what this meant. If he was going to have a squad of swordsmen, he had to lead them. The young master was well aware of the responsibility that would fall on his shoulders. Of course, the family will not provide them with any support, except for accommodation and food. But this is more than enough for him. As for the plan, the father asked how many people he wanted to hire. The boy replied that he would hire about 20, with a gradual increase in their number. Hardly realizing the responsibility his son was taking on, the father exhaled a heavy sigh. He emphasized that if his son really wanted to do this, it was fine. But before recruiting swordsmen, he advised him to meet with Seojung and ask for advice. The boy thanked his parents for their kindness. The mother asked him again if her son would be able to cope with all this. The father looked at his son carefully, realizing that the boy was growing up before his eyes. Watching their eyes, the young man realized that they both trusted him now. Without hesitation, he assures his mother that he will succeed. He leaves his father's estate and heads in the other direction. As he walks, Guan runs up to him and addresses him. He asks him if he is a member of the swordsman squad, to which the young master replied that Guan is not a member of the squad. Guan did not understand why he was not a member of the squad and why the master did not take him, but Bilidan had completely different plans. He planned to use him for something more important, because the path he had to travel was long. At first, the student did not understand these hints and began to worry. However, when he becomes strong enough, the boy asks him to join a squad of swordsmen. However, everything will depend on his performance, the young master says, and it's hard to disagree. Realizing this, Guan asks why the Swordsman's Alliance was formed in the first place. The fact is that the young master plans to turn the bullies Swordsman family into the best family in the Central Plains. He wants to make it so powerful that no one can attack it, and the Swordsman squad is just the beginning. Looking at the young master's determination, the apprentice was impressed by it. Such determination deserves respect, and he's not just talking about Guan. It applies to all the people of the Central Plains. The young master noticed that the disciple was watching him so closely, and wondered if he was joking, but it was nothing of the sort. The young man really believed that the master would definitely succeed and would help everyone with his own strength. Realizing this, Bilidan thought that in his position, others might call him crazy, but this guy believed him. After a while, the squad was assembled from people who wanted to join the service. Because of the positive rumors that had been spreading about the swordsman's family lately, about 100 people gathered at the playground after hearing the news of the recruitment. One by one, everyone demonstrated their skills. Among the candidates, 40 people with good abilities were selected. These 40 people were interviewed one by one, and the young master conducted the interview personally. The questions were quite simple. Why did they want to join the swordsman's unit? Some wanted to become famous martial artists and considered it a good start. Others answered in a completely different way, from honest answers that it was to earn money to respect for his father. Our hero did not pay much attention to all these answers. He chose those who spoke sincerely, not those who were good at persuasion. Having chosen the necessary number of warriors, the young master spoke to them, realizing that they could have heard a lot about him from various rumors. He wanted to say only one thing that should reach their ears. He asked them to forget all the rumors. The spark in their eyes began to fill their hearts with confidence, realizing that their commander would be great. He says that from now on they will judge him only by his actions. He emphasizes that they must hold their own opinions and always understand themselves. He used to have the most subjects in these lands. However, this was the first time he met these warriors face-to-face, low-level warriors. And after becoming the strongest man in the world, he quickly became the leader of the alliance. His heart is beating fast with curiosity about whether he can lead these people. He will never forget today's meeting. He is now the leader of this group, the young master declares. He turns to a young man named Ganhui. He comes forward and declares that it was no accident that the young master called him, because he had been watching him. This guy is 23 years old and he applied after working as a military instructor. He has a background in martial arts, which attracted the young master's attention. In the interview, he stated that he wanted to succeed as a martial artist. The young master asked if he could succeed if he joined their swordsman squad. The young man replied that there were rumors that the young master had changed, and he wanted to know his secret. He thought that if the young master could change like that, then he would be able to succeed in the future. It was a noble, honest, and sincere answer that satisfied Commander Billy Dan. From now on, he appointed this man as a team leader in their squad. Ganhui thanked him for the opportunity. The young master was happy to see a new noble family of swordsmen being born, which he would lead only to victory. The next day, the sounds of swords filled the valley. The training was so exhausting that it almost brought the warriors to the brink. The warriors were lying on the ground, panting from the enormous physical exertion. Sweat poured from them. They fell to the ground holding their legs, their arms shaking with convulsions. The leader of the squad, Ganhui, looked at the young master and did not understand how he was holding himself so well. The young man accumulated his energy in order not to succumb to fatigue. He used breathing techniques to keep himself in shape. He didn't look tired. It was not obvious that he was out of breath or had other signs of exhaustion. The squad leader asked how their master had so much stamina. He replied that they too could achieve this by running and doing muscle-building exercises for 6 hours every morning. Hearing this information, the squad leader was impressed that the boy trained his endurance for 6 hours every morning, as well as training with the swordsman. But in order to succeed in any business, you need to invest an equivalent amount of time and effort, the young man said. This insight amazed the squad leader, because he could not even imagine that if you put the same amount of effort and time into training, you could become so strong. The young master's teachings were so powerful. He insisted that there must come a time when you become obsessed with one thing and focus exclusively on it. He continued his breathing technique to regain his stamina. However, the commander still couldn't accept the fact that to succeed as a martial artist you need to train so much. It required an investment of equivalent time and effort. Guan's eyes opened wide, realizing the importance of this situation. The master insisted that the more effort and time you put in, the more likely you are to succeed. These words cut deeply into the soul of the squad leader, and he began to feel their deep meaning. He thanked his master from the bottom of his heart for the great training. The young master did not just look confident, he looked like a strong and determined man. Closing his eyes, he thought only that they were moving on. Our hero didn't notice how Guang came up to him from behind and said that he had never heard such words before. His frustrated face showed a bit of envy for the swordsman. The master decided to ask him if he felt envious of these guys. The young man confidently replied that he was a real man who wanted to achieve the best. The young owner reassured him, saying that everything that was to come would only get better. At these words, Guan's eyes seemed to come alive and sparkle. Deciding to joke, the master said that they were not as funny as he was. However, Guan walked away from them, saying that it was mean of the master because he should not do that. Realizing this, the master conceived that the rivalry between Guanghe and Guangta would keep them in constant tension, contributing to their further development. These two rivals, striving to become closer to the master, will force each other to move forward. As they watch each other, they will become even more obsessed, and they will need to focus on this thought in order to become stronger and achieve their goals. Soon, the boy approached one of the elders, who asked if the swordsman's squad was being properly managed, since they were no longer spending money on unnecessary things, given their position. The answer to this question was that maybe everything was going well, but he had never managed his money properly. The elder understands this well, and knows that feeding someone is not as easy as he thought in his younger years. Having gone through it himself, the young master now realizes what a hard job they have been doing, having run their family behind the scenes for a long time as the general manager. After expressing his point of view, the elder was impressed by the boy's words. He didn't even ask him if he understood the young man's perspective as well as he remembered it. The elder advised him to check on his soldiers, of course, and it was understandable. The next day, the young man, his friend, and his student set out for Zhaocheng. Guang went with them because he was asked to join them. He couldn't train today, and Guan's group leader would catch up with them, which could cause tension. The young master said that if Guan caught up with them, it would be like a war. He was worried about this and was afraid that the master would notice him and send him back to his place. After saying this, the young master laughed, but Guan too even got angry, asking why he was laughing, because it couldn't be. Billy Dan realized that Guan Tu had not yet realized that he was not at the same level as the young man who was learning the South Sea techniques, and that ordinary warriors could not compete with him. Looking at Guan Tai, he realized that he did not yet know his strength, because he had not sparred with anyone. In fact, he is already stronger than all the swordsmen gathered in this place. Since the master had trained him personally, of course he would become stronger, and so the master laughed. However, he did not show this to Guanta, and the boy asked him to stop laughing and not to leave him in this position. They approached one of the buildings, and the student noticed that the person who managed their money was supposed to be sitting in this building. He thought it was not a very luxurious house, but for the young master, it was not important what the house looked like, but that its insides were not rotten, and he asked to open the door. Guantoi shouted loudly that they had arrived. The door opened and a man came out. He looked quite miserable, almost like a homeless man. The apprentice noticed that the man looked quite shabby, and the master hoped that his mind was not as bad as his appearance. Turning to Master Kong, the boy asked if he was really who he said he was. Master Kong replied that he was only a member of the Kong family and asked what brought the boys to him. All of this happened because the chief administrator of the bullies Swordsman family, Jun, introduced him to them. The Kong family master reacted with surprise, realizing that the matter was quite serious. Nevertheless, he invited the boys to go inside to discuss it. As they walked forward, they saw a pile of books and scrolls on various martial arts. The young master asked if he could ask about his relationship with the chief steward, Jun. The young man replied that Jun was his master. Everyone was shocked to hear this. Master Kong asked how the young master was doing. The young master replied that he was doing well. The man was glad to hear that, but still asked why they had come to see him. The young man introduced himself as Bili Duan, the heir to the bullies Swordsman family, and explained that he had come because they needed a chief manager. Master Kong asked if they wanted him to be their chief steward. This was true, as Chief Steward Jun had recommended him. However, Master Kong asked if Jun had explained why he was living in such a remote area. The young master replied that he didn't have an exact answer, but that the master probably had his own reasons. Looking down, Master Kong turned away, and after a while began to tell his story. As expected, he didn't hear anything, because Master Kong had killed the person who hired him. This story scared Guantai very much, and he even began to fear this man. Master Kong got up from his chair and wished the boys a happy return, saying that he would not see them off. However, the young master assured him that he did not need to worry about it. He said that it was his personal business and did not concern others. The young master emphasized that he was not so weak that he would die from being hit by bills. This message made Master Kong realize that the young master was serious. The next day, the boys did not come empty-handed. The chief manager, the general, noticed a man he was quite familiar with. Master Kong accepted their offer and came with them. Although he looked like a homeless man, he would soon get a haircut and look normal. He will occupy a decent enough position and finally come out of the wilderness. The general was happy to see his master. A long time passed and they finally met. The general was glad to see his old student, who looked just fine. The young master had been watching and was happy to see them meet. However, the general asked the young man for advice for his master. There were many things he was missing, so he advised Master Kong to be careful, and he took this into consideration. The general asked the young master to buy him a drink. Realizing that the boys want to sit down and discuss many important issues, Bilidan realizes how important this is. He agrees to the general's request, but before he brings him a drink, he wants to look at his schedule. The general thinks for a while and walks away from them. As they watched him, they realized that he wanted to express his gratitude for accepting his student. The boy watched his reaction carefully. He decided to start a dialogue by asking about the current situation. He gives Master Kong 3,000 thalasses, which should be enough not only to feed 20 swordsmen, but also to pay their salaries for a month. Master Kong understood the situation and knew what to do with it. When the young master asked if everything would be all right, Master Kong replied that he had not been invited because of the difficult situation. Surprised by these words, he did not know what to say. He accepted the master's words and showed that he was serious. He handed the money to Master Kong and thanked him for his work. 20 swordsmen and 1 steward could not even be compared to Mareem's alliance. But he realized that this was only the beginning. The most important thing for him was that they had taken the first step. After some hard training of his swordsmen, time flew by incredibly quickly as the swordsmen trained and trained. Several months had passed since the swordsman squad was formed. Commander Guanhu had fully settled into his role, taking initiative and seriousness in everything. There were no complaints that the team leader was too young. Fortunately, the last 2 months of training completely changed both the approach and the movements of the swordsmen. As a result, the atmosphere in the squad has become quite pleasant, which was evident on the faces of its members. During a visit to the office of the chief financial officer, they started talking about working with escorts. It turned out that a Taizhou trading company had recently come to them, but their deal with the Taiyang escort agency had fallen through completely. They quickly found another place, but couldn't seem to find the right one. All this information was passed on to the young master by Master Kong. As a result, they offered a very good price for the escort, but wanted the goods delivered within 10 days. The young master asked how much money they were offering for the escort. Master Kong replied that it was in the neighborhood of 2,000 thalasses. After realizing this, the young master was sure that if they were offering 2,000 thalasses, their goods must be worth a lot of money. Kong was sure that this task could be very dangerous. However, the young owner decided that they should complete the task, confident that everything would be fine. It was time to start the practical tasks, and this task was one of the important components. Their squad prepared to escort the Taizhou trading company, getting their horses and chariots ready. The swordsman loaded the goods onto the carts together, carefully fulfilling the task. Guanghui kept reminding them to be careful while loading. The representative of the Chamber of Commerce said that these goods were particularly valuable, so they needed to be as careful as possible. He assured them that they would make sure the goods were delivered safely. The Chamber of Commerce did not have much confidence in them, but decided to trust them anyway. Despite their fears, the Chamber of Commerce fully relied on their help. The young owner was happy that they were trusted. They were probably worried when they heard that their squad was just a small, unofficial group of swordsmen. But right now, that was the problem they had to solve. The swordsmen set out on their journey. They walked through a narrow gorge, following the map they were given. All this time their path was quite boring, though dangerous. Guantu, sitting on the cart, began to doze off from boredom, yawning. 3 days had passed, and fortunately nothing had happened. The young master said that this was the way it should be. It was better to avoid fights whenever possible. They also avoided the inconvenience of sleeping on the side of the road. It was so peaceful that it was even boring. However, the young master noticed something suspicious up ahead. Perhaps because Guantu mentioned these words, suspicious people appeared on their way. At first, Guantu did not understand what they were talking about, but when he looked ahead, he saw it himself. They noticed that an entire detachment was crossing their path ahead. These men, holding swords and dressed as ninjas, blocked their way and stopped the chariot. One of them said that if they gave up their belongings and went their separate ways, they would be spared their lives. The young master, looking at this, estimates the considerable strength of the opponents. This was not just a random group of thieves, it was a whole army of warriors. Looking at the number of these people, the warriors realized that their forces were much inferior. However, the master did not care about the numerical superiority of the enemies. He ordered his troops to form up as they had been taught before. The young master stood in front, and the soldiers covered him from all sides. The thieves, seeing that they were ready for battle, ordered their troops to attack. Soon, face to face, the battle began to unfold. The young master held his blades in his hands, ready to attack anyone who came near. One of the main thieves, commanding the attack, did not even expect that the young master would destroy the 4 warriors behind him with his 4 blades. With skillful movements, the young master had already managed to neutralize the 4 enemies before they could approach the squad of swordsmen. The master commands. The commander of the squad, Guan, goes to the left, and Guantu goes to the right to control the flanks. Meanwhile, the young master rushes straight to the center, to the scoundrel who started the fight. Clashing swords, they crossed blades and looked into each other's eyes. The young master noticed that instead of the aura art and the white moon sword technique, their family art, the enemy was using a simple sword technique. At the moment the enemy was about to attack, he didn't even realize it. He was struck by the young master's lightning strike and sent to the next world. He instantly realized that his side was cut and blood began to flow from his shoulder. He wanted to continue the battle despite his wound, but did not notice the young master piercing him with his sword. Taking his insignificant life, he destroyed one of the leaders of the thieves. The warriors surrounding him saw this and realized that it was no longer time for jokes. They were scared to death. Fear filled their minds and their eyes were bloodshot. How is this possible? But the young master was not going to answer their questions. He simply pulled the sword out of the body of the rascal who had stood in his way. His body fell to the ground, and it would remain buried on this cursed roadside. The young master could have single-handedly destroyed their entire squad, and for him, this battle was just another training day. The battle continued, and the swordsman faced these warriors face to face. In dangerous moments, when the lives of his soldiers were in danger, our hero was always there, destroying everyone who stood in their way. The young patriarch was incredible on the battlefield, distinguished by his strength. Like lightning, he flew into battle, thirsting for the blood of his opponents, and could pass 3 enemies with 1 blow, and could slash past 3 enemies with 1 stroke, spilling their blood on the stony ground. His sword pierced through everyone who opposed him, making it clear who the real hero was on this battlefield. The warriors and the failed thieves who attacked them were soundly defeated, shedding their blood on this battlefield. Looking for those who still posed a threat, the young master moved forward. He attacked anyone who looked at him askew or held a sword in his hands. Each time, like lightning, he swooped in, striking with powerful blows and cutting through the flesh of these villains. The enemies fell to the ground, returning to their former lives, but in a different form. His swordsmen, watching their young patriarch become a true master, were amazed. They didn't know what to say when they saw his flawlessness in battle. He killed in cold blood all those who stood in his way, killing not 1, but 10. His cold gaze penetrated every cell of the battlefield, and he closely watched his soldiers. His eyes fell on Guangtai, who was also fighting, covered in the blood of his enemies. He was enjoying every blow, but he still made many mistakes. His opponent could have been defeated much more effectively by using his skills than by confronting him mindlessly. Watching his student fight, he was not going to interfere. When the barbarian shouted, "Die, Guangtai!" and pointed his sword at him, the boy just gritted his teeth. Seizing the moment, Guantu stabbed the scoundrel in the chest. The enemy fell down, and Guantu defeated him. It was his first time killing someone. After catching his breath, he looked around at the battlefield. A huge number of fallen soldiers lay on the ground, their bodies covered in blood. The young master saw that there were 4 corpses near Guantai that he had defeated on his own. Out of breath and holding his sword with both hands, Guantai realized how strong he had become. However, the young master was nervous about his psychological state, as it was clear that he had overstepped his bounds. After the fight, it was necessary to treat the wounds with various ointments and bandages. Those who were not injured were ordered by the commander to stay alert. The soldiers made a halt, helping the wounded, and the goods were carefully covered to protect them from prying eyes. The soldiers needed to help in any way they could. They began to bring the wounded back to normal and provide first aid. Guantu was impeccable in this battle. He did not suffer any injuries, but was completely covered in the blood of his enemies. The young master approached him and asked if it was his first time fighting. Guantu, holding his bloodied sword, replied that it was. His hands were bloody, but he survived the fight and killed 4 people. However, keeping the situation under control, the young master ordered him to look around. When Guantu looked around, he saw the people he had fought for. If he hadn't killed those 4 murderers then, at least 4 of those people would be dead. Guantoi protected them. This realization deeply impressed the young man who was just beginning his training. The master said that it was not easy for him, but they were already in a world where violence was inevitable. If he wanted to be a part of this world, it meant being ready to get blood on his hands for the sake of justice and for the sake of his comrades. Anyone who carries a sword may appear to be a person with moral principles, but in reality, they are not. Real men are those who are ready to take part in battle. These are the ones who cope with this difficult task. In his memory, he recalled his past life and his faithful soldiers. The young master turned to Guantai once again. He asked him after this bloody battle if he really wanted to become part of this world. Guantai, looking at him with fear in his eyes, nevertheless, confidently replied that he wanted to become this person, and this enthusiasm was palpable. The young master looked at him again and was pleased with him. He put his hand on his shoulder and said that he had fought very well today. The young master thanked him, and the boy almost cried. He began to wipe his tears with his dirty hand, thanking the young master. The soldiers, seeing this touching moment, were amazed, and smiles appeared on their faces, despite the cruelty of this world. The young master, remaining strict and reserved, was pleased with his soldiers. He ordered them to look at the people next to them. All of them fought so well that they were able to save the lives of their comrades who were nearby. He thanked everyone who took part in the battle for finishing it without loss. He was personally proud of them and expressed his gratitude for their contribution. The soldiers began to look into each other's eyes. They were satisfied with this battle, and in spite of everything, they became a great unit. Despite all the obstacles, the soldiers thanked their commander for this battle and his efforts. The corpses that lay on their way became a symbol and the first part of what they had to overcome, because the whole world was ahead. After a while, the mission was completed, and the young master returned to Kong. He brought back the money they had earned, even more than expected. The young master brought back 8,000 thalasses. Why such a large sum if they were only supposed to receive 2,000 thalasses for the work? It happened that they were attacked by members of a beast squad, for whom the government had set a substantial reward. Thanks to this, they earned a lot of money. When they brought this startup capital to Master Kong, the young master told him to think about how to spend it. As Master Kong watched him, he noticed that Bilidan was once again entrusting him with a large sum of money without hesitation, and he expressed his surprise at the young master's trust in him. He wondered if it was really done out of the goodness of his heart, perhaps because of the chief steward who also trusted him. To this, Bilidan only replied that this might be the case, but it would become clear later, not now. However, Kong wondered why, if that was the case, the young master trusted him. Bilidan replied that this was his destiny. He believes that his destiny is not for the general manager to just take the money and run. Master Kong realized that the guy was quite a strong person. He looked down, realizing everything he was about to say. The young patriarch promised him to manage the money properly. And next time, Master Kong will still make the young master say a phrase that is important to him. He wants to wait for the moment when the young master says that he trusts him. Hearing these words, the young man rejoiced at the thought that he was surrounded by loyal people. He responded to these words with a smile, noting that the circumstances are quite interesting. He was looking forward to the moment when Master Kong would make him say these words. With these thoughts in mind, the boy moved on, heading off to meet new adventures. Let's return to the Muram Alliance, where the counselor was sorting through his books and found one that was important to him. He picked up the book, began to look at it and read it, but was interrupted by a man who quietly approached and asked what he was reading. The advisor looked to the side and saw that the current advisor to the Alliance, Murim, had decided to visit him. This advisor named Simotyan came to discuss a very important issue. Simotyan said that no one knows what can happen in life and recalled how he once had to wait 6 hours in a waiting room to meet with an advisor. The current counselor reminded him that they had not seen each other for a long time after he had waited so long. Understanding the hint and looking away, the man tried to avoid confrontation. Simotyan was annoyed that the meeting with this gentleman took only 7.5 minutes, even though he had to wait 6.5 hours to talk for only 6 minutes. Although the counselor did not want to do this, he regretted what happened then because he was very busy. Still, Simotyan now understands how much work is involved in this position, but he still had one question. Simotyan asked why he stayed in Murim's alliance, and whether he wanted to take revenge on him for becoming the new advisor. The former advisor explained that he had spent his entire life in the Murim alliance, and had never thought about life outside of it. He was glad to be able to do his work here. The man tried to explain that he had lived all his life in the Murim alliance, and was happy to be able to work there. However, Simotyan, the current counselor, did not believe him. Nevertheless, the former advisor thanked him for allowing him to stay in the alliance, and promised to serve him sincerely. Hearing these words, Simotyan was impressed by his loyalty. He laughed with satisfaction that his old friend, whom he had envied all this time, would now serve for his benefit. Simotyan left him with a satisfied face. When the scoundrel left the office where his former advisor had once worked, he did not know whether to laugh or cry at the state of the current Murim alliance. He wanted to leave this worthless place immediately, but he realized that he could not do so until he had taken revenge on the leader of the alliance. Until then, he will play the role of a cute bunny, but at the same time continue to work hard, no matter how long it takes. We moved to the Dongping Chamber of Commerce, where the horses of the Swordsman squad arrived with the goods and they began to unload them. The warriors of Dongping were happy to see these guys who brought them the goods, but still did not know who they were, these unknown swordsmen. The young master went forward, despite all the obstacles, and they were met with a harsh question. They were sternly asked where they were from and who they were. The young man introduced himself as a swordsman of the Bi family's squad. He explained that they had come here after receiving an invitation from the head of the chamber. These guys understood everything and asked for a moment to wait. They would immediately inform the head of their arrival. Guantai noticed that the security at this place was quite strict, but the young master did not forget about the second mission of the squad. It was to escort the head of the Dongping Chamber of Commerce, who was threatened with reprisals along with his family. If the existing contract was not terminated, the deal would be quite profitable. Soon after, Bo Lu, the chamber leader who was in Dongping, greeted the young men who had come to his aid. The young master introduced himself as Bi Liduan, coming at the invitation of this elder. Bo Lu had heard of him and confirmed that their intervention in the contract was correct. Bo Lu explained that his cousin, one of the leaders of the criminal gang, was connected to the leader of the obedience union, Shu. The young master did not quite understand how Bo Lu could obey the Shu obedience union. It turned out that the Shu obedience union was one of the famous dark unions in the district, named after a man named Shu Liang, who was followed by its members. It is a group of street gangsters engaged in robbing pavilions and bars, usually demanding money. Bo Lu reminded the soldiers that they could not let their guard down, because these scoundrels are very violent. There are more of them, and they are everywhere. The old man had also heard that some of them were skilled in martial arts. The young master thanked him for the information and said they would take it into consideration. If the old man is ready, then they can leave right now. They set off to deliver old Bo Lu to the appointed place according to the contract. The chariot moved, carrying the old man in a protected place, and the soldiers accompanied it, carefully inspecting every corner. Because Lu, traveling with the young master, remembered that they had destroyed the beastly band. Fortunately, it was true because this band of thieves was quite famous. However, what the young master could say about them was that they were only a band of thieves. After a while, the chariot ride came to an abrupt halt when someone from far away shouted, "Halt!" And the young master decided to get out of the chariot. When he got out, he saw that the soldiers were quite tense, and it was because of something important. They had been ambushed by these scoundrels who decided to surround them. His soldiers looked ahead and saw an endless number of enemies, quite a few of them, a whole row. Realizing that the situation was serious, the young master stepped forward. Looking around, he saw a huge number of enemies surrounding their group of 20 men. Not only did they surround them, but they seemed to have besieged them like a castle with a countless army. The situation was quite bad, and something had to be done. Because Lu, when he got out of the chariot, he was amazed at the enormous number of enemies. He was prepared for the fact that they could all die at that moment and say goodbye to their lives. Such a large number of enemies against a small group of swordsmen was very dangerous. As a true leader, Bo Lu decided to cancel his request, saying that there was no need to die for him. He renounces the contract, offering to return, and asks these people to let everyone go. The main representative of the enemies comes out of the crowd. This man, smiling, feels confident because he is a representative of the Shu Obedience Union, and his name is Shu Liang. He says, "Who would have thought?" The old man nevertheless recognizes his mistake and because of his stupidity, renounces the contract, asking to release the soldiers. Shu Liang coming forward feels superior. This is not a simple matter for him. He can't just trust this old man. He suggests that if they return in this form, they might decide to complete the contract tonight. The old man seems to offer to write a detailed note on their family if necessary. But what good will this note do to the Shu Union representative? If it doesn't satisfy him, what does he want at all? Shu Liang suggests that the old man cut off one of his hands, since he signed the contract with this hand and does not know his place. In his opinion, this would be fair. The old man was shocked and horrified by the words he heard, because they were incredibly cruel. After a while, Shu Liang started laughing, saying that he was only joking and that the old man was more cowardly than he seemed. However, he warned that if they acted with one hand again, it would not be limited to just the hand. Shu Liang then ordered his soldiers to clear the road to let them go. After a while, however, Shu noticed a confident man. He looked at him and asked if he was accompanying the old man. He threatened that if he continued to behave like a Murim man and brandish his sword, Shu Liang would not hesitate to kill him. He ordered him to disappear today so that the elder could save his life. The young master did not seem to hear these words, and Guantu, looking at the crowd behind him, worried that they might not be able to cope. The old man quickly began to walk back to the chariot, emphasizing that they had to go back quickly, because these scoundrels might change their minds and kill them all. But the young master said that since they had hired them, they should trust them. The old man realizes that the young master seems to have lost his mind. However, it is clear that they do not look like they will act on his words alone. This is a counter to Shu Liang's words, and it has made him incredibly angry. The young master pulls out his sword and orders them to watch carefully how to deal with these scoundrels. He wants to show how a real person and a member of the Qianhu is different from all these scum around him, and in a fit of anger he draws his sword. His student Guantu supports his master. He orders the entire squad to get on alert, spread out, and form a battle formation. Shu Liang, seeing such stubbornness, decides with a spark of hatred in his eyes that if the young master wants to die so badly, they will fulfill his wish. His soldiers began to attack the swordsman. The young master, holding his sword in his hands, prepares to confront all these scoundrels. He carefully analyzed the battle and realized that he did not need to make many moves. With a single stroke of his sword, he cut through the 3 villains standing in front of him. His swing was so powerful that it could kill many enemies, which amazed everyone on the battlefield. Shock could be seen in Shu Liang's eyes when he saw the scattered pieces of his men. Silence reigned on the battlefield after this blow, and the face of the scoundrel from the Union remained unmoved. Everyone held their breath and opened their mouths, not knowing how to react to what they saw. The warriors, including the swordsman and even Shu Liang himself, were shocked by what had happened. He looked at the ground and saw his soldiers lying scattered, especially those who had been the first to rush into battle. The young master looked more than just confident. He seemed to be able to move mountains, not to mention destroy their unit. Shu did not expect such a confrontation from the young opponent standing in front of him. His eyes flashed with even more hatred, and he was ready to sacrifice all his soldiers just to destroy them. The line that could not be crossed was broken, and the leader of the Union, Shu, ordered his soldiers to kill the young rival. But the boy confidently held his position, looking at the endless number of enemies. He began to blow their heads off like the wind, and they just watched as their comrades fell. Some soldiers tried to strike at the young master, but he skillfully dodged them. He ruthlessly wiped them off the face of the earth, so that they could never commit crimes again. These scoundrels fell at the feet of the young master. He calmly walked on, despite the number of enemies running at him. After a few swings of his sword, he just kept moving forward, and the enemies who attacked him fell. With his sword, he did not just destroy these villains. but he was erasing their existence as if with a pen on paper. They fell, scattered to pieces in various states like trash. Just like a littered clearing in the forest, these people were lying around like garbage. Seeing this, Shu was completely shocked. He ordered his soldiers, "Why are you standing there? Stop him!" But none of his soldiers, even after such blows, came out to defend their leader. With such clarity and self-confidence, the young master walked right up to the face of this scoundrel. When the leader of the Shu Union came face to face with the young man, he was about to run away and said that they would return. But the boy didn't let him finish. He just swung his sword and decapitated the scoundrel, leaving his head lying on the ground. An incredible amount of bloody liquid flooded everything. The very legendary leader of the vast union fell and froze forever. The warriors of the young master Bilidan simply froze in place, not believing their eyes. But the young master not only demonstrated seriousness and confidence, he also radiated an aura of danger. The enemies, seeing such a strong opponent, did not know what to do, but fighting was not an option. One of them ran forward, threw his weapon to the ground, fell to his knees and began to beg for mercy. Following him, the other soldiers also threw down their weapons, surrendering and bowing before him. They begged the young master to spare them, because they did not want to die, and their lifeless leader was lying before his feet. The swordsman, numbering only 20, had just defeated a huge army. This scene amazed Bulu. He had never seen anything like it in his entire life. The young master was showing his soldiers what it meant to be a real warrior. He showed them what it means to be a human being and a warrior, and why they are called the people of Jiangsu. Now, they understand what it means. The swordsmen paid homage to their commander, and the warriors, who outnumbered their opponents, knelt down. The job was done, and the young master suggested moving on. Bulu even forgot where he needed to go after such a battle. The young master asked if he were going to sign a contract. The old man agreed, and they soon returned to the Bai family. After the recent successful completion of the mission, the bond within the swordsman squad was strong. The head of Guanhu came and broke the news that, when the members of the squad got together, they all expressed a desire to be like the squad leader. He also noted that the number of people who joined the morning training had increased significantly, and he willingly taught them everything. After their swordsman squad completed 3 more missions, he followed them to A2 once, and on other occasions he simply sent the members off. Despite the fact that several members of the squad were injured during the missions, they successfully completed them. The money and practical tasks were a great motivation for them. They not only gained real combat experience, but also felt a competitive spirit and a need to improve their skills. Everyone realized that the whole of Jiangsu primarily suffers from weak people, and from that day on, their small group of swordsmen became a level and stronger, like an army of 1,000. Returning to the Congo with important information, they made a big profit, and an unexpected investment. Instead of the expected 1,200 talents, they earned an impressive 4,500 talents. And thanks to the additional income from the Duplin Chamber of Commerce, Congo will be able to hire 80 employees next year, not 40. This was just great news for the young owner, but he only plans to hire 40 more, as planned. But Master Congo laughed at his answer. The young master asked why he was laughing. Congo explained that he was glad that the boy was not greedy and that they had a good relationship. Perhaps he hopes that the young master will make a decision when he sees fit. The guy said that he was glad that you were not making unwise investments, but were quietly increasing your resources, and called Mr. Congo the general manager. At this point, Mr. Congo feels confident in his boss's actions. But Bilidan, the leader of the Murim Alliance in his previous life, had met many greedy old men, including those from the Council of Elders. He does not understand their greed at all, because the desire for development is completely different from greed. The young master promises himself that he will never put greed before development, and yet they must move slowly, step by step, to achieve success. Congo accepts his words as wise. He will take this into account and swears loyalty to the young master. The boy, in turn, feels that relations with Congo and the smaller units, smaller than the swordsman, are improving. One fine moonlit night, the boy asked for a secret meeting with his old friend. He was curious about what had happened, that he decided to ask for a secret meeting. It turned out that the Heavenly Blade sect had sent one of Ma Fengzi's sons. The young master was very impressed. It turned out that Ma Tingxiu had met with the leader of the Shanduan branch and asked him to gather all the sect leaders. It is not yet known why, but they would not have done it in good faith. It is clear that there is a catch. The leader of the Shanduan branch refused. If this is true, then you are a real honest man. The young master realizes that it seems that there are only rotten people like Gongzong in the Murim Alliance. After that, Ma Tingxiu came to the syndicate, trying to pressure them to organize a banquet. After they promised to contact him later, He left, leaving them with questions about how to proceed. Bilidan reflected that if he hadn't come to the Yang Syndicate, it would have been difficult for him to refuse. But if he doesn't say no, it will cause problems. He decides that it will be better to deal with him through the Yang Syndicate, where he can intervene at any time. He asks that they let him know that they will do everything he asked. The head accepts his advice and decides to act on his recommendations. Next time the young gentleman asks not to come in person, he asks to deliver the message through someone he trusts the most. The master accepts his advice and expresses his respect. A young man named Ma Tingshu, one of Ma Fengzi's 22 children, cunningly won his title as head of the alliance. Although he was pushed out of the heir-apparent race from a young age, there were many things about him that indicated his genius in various fields. His martial arts skills were as good as those of the other heirs. Because his mother was a maid of the Heavenly Blade sect, his brothers pushed him out of the line of succession. According to information received by the young master from the information broker Zhang Zhengyu, Ma Tingshu was invited to a banquet organized by his master, Ma Yig-S. Ma Yig-S invited promising talents to the banquet, including Ma Tingshu. He probably plans to take control of the children of the leaders of various factions to make it easier to control Shandong in the future. It was also said that Song Huali, who has returned and is now called the huge beauty of Shandong, is attracting attention. Since her father and son probably have similar features, it is likely that she is as lustful as they are. Even if she isn't, he could propose Song Huali to her father. The young master realizes that he has little time to think of a plan and put it into action. He has absolutely no choice but to resort to this idea, so he goes to the family of Song. A maid who ran as fast as she could to the main building of the family dream. Opening the door, she said that the young master was here, and he came to see his father. He said that he wanted to see the young mistress. And of course, the girl was alarmed because he could not just address her like that. After waiting for a short time by a tree outside the family's border, the family has a dream. Lin comes running with her brother, and she really sees this guy who came to her. She was a little confused because she did not understand the purpose of his visit. The guy looked at her sternly without expressing any emotions at all. She asked why he wanted to see her. The guy asked her to go for a walk. The two of them walked together, talking separately from her brother, who followed behind for safety. The young gentleman asked her how she was doing, because even though she was focused on training every day, nothing interesting was happening in her life. She replied that she was also training every day, but she had heard about his business trips and victories, including the successful completion of other tasks. The young master replies that they were just lucky. However, she realizes that luck alone cannot explain such results. She wonders why he is still acting like an ignoramus. Perhaps he wants to correct his mistakes. He laughs at her words because that is not the case at all. He had never pretended to be incompetent, although the girl had noticed that he had not changed after she had beaten him. Indeed, it was true. And that's where it all started. And what is he suggesting then? Maybe he wants her to believe it. But it was the truth. Realizing the interesting situation, she still asked why he came to her. The guy steps forward and voices his proposal. He wants to invite her to spar, and these words sound quite interesting. But it looks like a joke, and the girl asks again. She wants to know why he wants to fight her and why he's so serious. He recalls that day and asks for compensation for what happened then. Thinking about it, the girl realizes that she has to compensate him. She accepts his challenge, although she does not understand his intentions. If he wants to spar, she suggests that they make it official. She offers to spar officially and follow all the rules. The young master has exactly that in mind. After a while, they return to the Song clan and stand on the training ground. The girl holds her sword and prepares to fight her ex. The young master is not worried about fighting a girl with whom he was once close. A sister or brother, I'm not sure, watched the fight and was impressed. Their fight was very intense and a bit uneven. The girl asks the boy to be careful because she is serious. The young master realizes that he must not give her any advantage. Otherwise, she could do serious damage. The girl decides to attack first. She swung her sword and aimed it directly at the young master. He kept one hand behind him and easily deflected the blow with the other, as if it hadn't happened. This did not please the girl, and she prepared for another attack. Despite several attempts, her blows were still successfully deflected. No movements helped. All the techniques she had practiced did not work. It seemed that the guy could play with his other hand, not compete with her. He was doing this to test her skill, even though she had impressive skills and graceful movements. The young master decided to attack her to see the result. Although it was difficult for the girl, she managed to deflect his blow perfectly. Her brother watched the fight and was amazed to see a young master with such skills. Although it seemed that the girl was cornering him, she had no advantage. No matter how strong her attacks were, they were all in vain. The guy, standing with one arm, continued to deflect the blows. The girl wondered what had happened to this scoundrel. why he was so skillful with his sword. She tried to get to his head and strike him, but he rudely blocked her blow, throwing all her movements aside. The girl was already tired and had spent all her energy not noticing him. At this point, the young master was about to act, looking at her sternly. He swung his sword with such seriousness that it seemed as if he wanted to kill her. The sword was near her neck, as if death was about to touch her. Her brother, seeing this, was worried and wanted to run to help, but the young lady turned away from the boy's blow. He hit her pretty good, leaving her with an irritation on her skin. The boy was not going to give up. Since it was an official fight, he started throwing punches. He felt no hatred or sadness, only a crazy calmness. He landed enough blows to win the fight. The girl fell to the ground with her legs up. We can say that he paid her back for beating him. Her brother ran up to her shouting, "Young lady, are you okay?" The girl looked very bad. The young man had beaten her badly. Holding her sister, her brother asked if the guy was crazy, how he could treat her like that. If it was a fair fight, then if he thought he should have been gentler because she was a woman, let him say so. But still, she suggested that he could stop at least this time. But he didn't stop, because it was payback for her beating him last time. Song Hua-lin said that was enough, and she accepted defeat. Her body was tired, and her bruises would take a long time to heal. She wonders what the last blow he gave her was. Realizing that the girl felt strong gives a chance that she feels an inner energy that symbolizes her good skills. Thank you for watching this video. Subscribe to the channel, there will be more to come. If you support us with likes and comments, the next part will be released much faster.